Chapter 1362. The fiery red lava spewed out of the volcano's crater and rushed into the sky. It was like a fiery red dragon rising into the sky, lighting up half of the sky. The fiery dragon soars into the sky. The sacred fire insignia has appeared. Our tribe will prosper. The great elder exclaimed with a trembling voice. Greetings, Lava King. The lava demons also looked at the soaring lava with sparkling eyes. They looked at Sargeras, who was holding the sacred fire insignia and walking down slowly on the lava. They knelt on one knee and exclaimed loudly. From today onwards, the lava demons will officially change their name to the Burning Legion. Sargeras raised the sacred fire insignia high above his head, and a ball of fiery red flames rose. Drops of golden red lava dripped from the flames and floated towards the lava demons who were half kneeling on the ground. They sank into the glabella of the lava demons and turned into a fiery symbol in the shape of a mountain. It was as if a layer of shackles had been wiped away. Rolling lava flowed rapidly on the surface of their bodies, and they felt unprecedentedly carefree. Burning Legion. Burning Legion. Burning Legion. All the lava demons stood up one after another, and their shouts echoed throughout the entire island. The news of Alfred and Simmons perishing together spread like wildfire, causing the demon islands to tremble. The chiefs of 2 of the top 10 tribes actually died at the same time. No matter if they were killed or really perished together, such a thing had never happened in the past 100 years. The shock it brought was even more intense than when the spatial demon patriarch was killed. Meanwhile, the abyss demons and flaming demons had already entered a state of war preparation. After both parties had a small-scale battle on West Point Island, they each gathered a large number of their people and were ready to enter a large-scale battle at any time. A terrifying storm was brewing. At the critical juncture of the peace talks, if the abyss demons and flaming demons started a war first, the demons' stance in the peace talks might change. The abyss demons and flaming demons were fanatical advocates of war. They tried to push for a racial war and hoped that they could obtain a dominant position in this war. That night, many demons on the demon islands couldn't sleep. After washing up, Meg lay back on his bed. He closed his eyes and began to check the rewards he received after killing Alfred. First, there was the title of Guardian of the Base. Meg wasn't sure what it was used for. It was probably similar to the title of Good Guy card. What really piqued Meg's interest was the chance to ask a confidential question. System, how do I use this opportunity? Can I ask any question I want? For example, are you my biological child? Meg raised his eyebrows. Although the host is my father, I'm definitely not the host's biological son. The system said solemnly. Meg nodded. I see. That's fine too. As long as you know how to call me Daddy. No, the host is not this system's father, and this system is not the host's biological son. This system only exists because of the host's appearance. The system corrected in exasperation. You see, isn't this the conclusion of the chicken before the egg? In terms of cause and effect, I'm still your father, Meg said with a smile. The question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, has yet to come up with a definite answer. If we use this as a judgment, from a certain point of view, this system might be the host's father. Without me, there wouldn't be you. But without you, I'm still me. So, system, do you think you're a father or a son? Meg laughed with contempt. Father. The system blurted out. Good boy. Meg nodded with satisfaction. All right, let's talk about this confidential question. What kind of question can be considered confidential? Meg asked. Secrets that are hidden outside the knowledge of this world and not known by most people will be classified as confidential. Once these secrets are exposed, there might be some unpredictable effects on this world. Therefore, the host is shielded, and the system is also in a limited state of eating. The system answered. Meg was deep in thought. If humans had secrets, then it wasn't strange that this world had secrets that were not known by people. Many of these secrets were kept in high places by the major races. The host has killed the base destroyer, Alfred, and obtained the title of base guardian. You have also obtained a confidential question and the opportunity to obtain the answer from the secret vault. This is a rare opportunity, please cherish it. In other words, this might be a secret that even you have no way of knowing. Yes. Meg went into deep thought after receiving the system's affirmative answer. Although he had been absorbing the knowledge of this world from books for the past half a year, and understood this world through countless ancient books and history, he did have many doubts about this world. For example, what kind of world was the Norland continent before the racial war started? Why did Atlantis sink? Why wasn't it recorded in the history books? What was the devil that signed the agreement with Alfred? Questions flashed past his mind one by one. They were all questions that he wanted to know, but had no way of knowing. I want to know what kind of existence the skeleton that pulled me into the stone statue space was. Meg hesitated for a while, and finally chose this question. That strange stone statue, the black fog that appeared consecutively in the Wind Forest and the Demon Islands, and the skeleton that appeared in the stone statue space all made Meg feel uneasy. The fear of the unknown made him feel uncomfortable. What lies in eternal slumber is not necessarily death. Spirits of the dead that have experienced strange eons will also die. Accompanied by the sound of an old-fashioned typewriter, a line of black words appeared in Meg's mind. Meg read it softly with furrowed brows. This paragraph looked familiar. The sound of the typewriter stopped, and the line of words gradually disappeared. I remember now. This paragraph came from Abdullah al-Hassad's Book of the Dead. Meg's eyes lit up as he suddenly remembered where this paragraph came from. However, looking at the words that had completely disappeared, he frowned again, and said, But, what does this paragraph have to do with this question? The secret vault didn't give any other answer. That's it. System, you're trying to scam me. Meg was stunned for a moment. He felt like he had been played. In order to kill Alfred, he had racked his brains and gone through a series of operations before he could successfully kill him. In the end, he got such an ambiguous sentence in return. Moreover, it was a sentence from a book on Earth. The secret vault has been closed again. The host has no right to ask again, the system answered. Chapter 1363. What does this paragraph mean? Meg heard this and was too lazy to delve deeper into it. He calmed down and pondered. Meg had seen the Book of the Dead Spirit from Lovecraft's collection. Back then, he had borrowed a collection of Lovecraft's collection from the library when someone was planting the Cthulhu mythos. However, he wasn't very interested in Western horror, so he only skimmed through a few short stories and the illustrations before returning the book. Even with his memory, he could only recall some fragments and did not have a deep impression of it. However, he remembered that paragraph very clearly. As he had not studied it in depth, Meg did not know much about the Crissa mythological system. However, he knew that the Great Old Ones held a very important position in the entire system. He roughly remembered that they were gods that had survived from ancient times. Could it be that the skeleton man is a Great Old One, a god that had survived from ancient times? Meg whispered to himself. With his understanding of the Crissa mythological system, that was all he could make at the moment. An unknown mysterious existence, a strange black fog, the ability to bestow great power to others, and the ability to control everything with the power of the dead. All these did not seem like things that a level 10 expert could do. The strength of the mysterious skeleton man and the stone statue should be above level 10. The realm of strength that was called extraordinary had never been proven to exist in this world. It seems that I still have to make up for it. The self-proclaimed man of destiny, Lovecraft, might really know something special. Meg was deep in thought. Then, he said to the system, pack up all the books of the Crusoe mythological system for me. Host, this system, according to the publishing price, add 1 copper coin for each book, Meg said calmly. This system will pack it for you immediately. The system's voice immediately became attentive. Ding! 1,000 books with Crusoe elements have been successfully packed. The total price is 89,233 copper coins. Ding! Fees have been successfully deducted. Ding! It has been delivered. Meg opened his eyes and looked at the thick stacks of books that almost covered a wall. There was also a lot of network mixed in. He could not help but feel a headache. This stupid system would not let go of any opportunity to make money. Forget it, I'll look at it tomorrow. Meg looked at the wall of books and hesitated for a while before lying back down on the bed. Although the Crusoe mythological system could give him some inspiration, he did not think that the answer was in these books. The secret vault might have used the words of the Book of the Dead as an answer. Whether it was closely related or not, he needed to understand it further. After a tiring day, Meg had a good sleep with the smell of books and ink. When he woke up the next day, he was greeted by a wall of books. He rubbed his glabella with a headache. There were so many books, and he didn't know where to start reading them. Let's cook first. Meg glanced at the alarm clock and went downstairs. Just as he was about to enter the kitchen, he saw Jane standing in the courtyard, rubbing the holy light. A faint holy light was slowly condensing on her fingertips, and it was as weak as a candle. Jane's expression was particularly solemn and sincere. She stared at the holy light as if she was looking at her own faith. You learned it so quickly. You're really talented. Meg glanced at Jane's shimmering horn. There was also a bit of holy light condensing there. Over the past few days, Meg had already witnessed all of the miraculous uses of holy light. Light was always the fastest, and it was very effective against the aura of death. He was very happy to see the emergence of a light-type demon. Perhaps that would be of great help to him in the unknown future. If there are really great old ones, does the god that the mages believe in really exist? The god of light, the god of life, the god of fire. What is their relationship with the great old ones? A question suddenly popped up in Meg's mind. Although he had always thought that it was just a fixed spell for mages to cast spells, the answer he got from the secret vault last night overturned many of his beliefs. If the great old ones really existed, then the existence of God was also acceptable. What a headache. I hope it's just a legend. Meg shook his head. He was also a little resistant to the unknown. Are the great old ones a new species? How's the meat quality? How's the fat content? Are there conditions to develop it into a new dish? Can it be cultivated on a large scale? The research of new recipes needs to be put on the agenda. Slice it into sashimi. Barbecue it with charcoal. Wrap it with bran and fry it until both sides are golden. Stir-fry it. Just as Meg was having a headache over the possible existence of the great old ones, he did not notice the strange words mixed in with the data flow that slipped through his mind like a waterfall. The holy light in Jane's hand suddenly extinguished. She sighed a little dejectedly. When she looked up, she saw Meg standing at the door. She blushed and stuttered, Boss. Meg came back to his senses when he heard the voice. He smiled and said, Oh, Jane is very diligent. You got up so early to practice. I'm too stupid. I can't learn well, so I can only get up earlier. Jane lowered her head embarrassedly. Compared to the lady boss, she was too stupid. She could only light up a little holy light and could not even light up the room. No, you're already very good. Meg smiled and shook his head. Irina had also praised Jane's talent on the way here yesterday. Continue practicing. I'll go make breakfast for you guys. Okay. Jane nodded and watched Meg enter the kitchen before continuing to light up the holy light. After breakfast, Meg went upstairs to read for a while. What he chose was a collection of short stories by H. Lovecraft. After all, he was the creator of the Cthulhu mythos system, so his books should have a greater reference value. At 8:00, Meg went downstairs to collect crayfish as usual. Qatar was still at the front of the line, carrying a net bag with more than 10 crayfish in it. Boss, I caught 13 crayfish today. Can I practice with these crayfish? Qatar saw Meg and raised the crayfish in his hand excitedly. Of course. Meg nodded. It was naturally best for students to bring their own ingredients. Okay. Qatar put the crayfish aside and took the initiative to help Meg pour the purchased crayfish into the pool. He was a great help to Meg. Ivan, who caught 4 crayfish, also quickly joined the team to help. After the purchase of the crayfish, the 10 apprentices were all present. More or less, they all brought crayfish. This made Meg, who originally planned to continue reading, choose to stay and start teaching everyone. Heat control was the most important point when cooking crayfish. Therefore, Meg prepared to teach everyone how to control the heat this morning. Chapter 1364. Meg's teaching was simple and easy to understand. Even Ivan, who was a complete novice at cooking, could understand, and quickly got the hang of it under his guidance. As there were only 3 iron pots, everyone had to take turns. 1 crayfish was a chance to try. The price of 50 copper coins made everyone's attitude much more serious. Qatar, who had 13 crayfish, became the tycoon among them. He had an extremely high trial and error rate. Failure was visible to the naked eye. Whether it was burning when stir-frying, or turning the pot into a paste when boiling the sauce, the common mistakes of novices appeared one after another. However, the improvement was also very obvious. Ivan, who couldn't even use the spatula smoothly, could already flip an entire crayfish in the big pot successfully. Alright, today's morning practice is over. I will rest for a while before opening for business. You guys can go back first, Meg said to the apprentices at 11:00. If they didn't leave now, they would have to stay for lunch. Everyone bade farewell to Meg respectfully. They only knew how difficult it was to make a scrumptious crayfish after they learned it personally. Their admiration for Meg also increased with each passing day. Alfred and Simmons are settled. Who's next? Meg asked Irina during lunch. Irina thought for a while, and said, Weston, then. He's a good choice. Meg nodded slightly. Weston, the second elder of the Shivaras, was one of the participants in the ambush against him back then. The Shivaras were also an extremely warlike demon race. They were known for their terrifying destructive power. They were ranked second among the top 10 demon races. They had a large number of people, and their high-end combat power had increased rapidly in the past 100 years. They had already started to challenge the dominance of the fear demons. The fear demons' attitude towards the peace agreement was not clear, and the Shivaras were the true leaders of the main battle camp. They were also pressuring the other races, trying to form a strong alliance of the main battle demons. As the second elder of the Shivaras, Weston had a high status. However, his strength was not considered strong. He had barely broken through to rank 10 a dozen years ago, but he was a rare demon that was good at strategy. He could be considered the brain of the destruction demons. He had played a crucial role in the rapid growth of the destruction demons in the past 100 years. In Mag's memory, when those demons and humans were laughing and mocking Alex, who had lost his limbs, Weston was the only one who suggested that he should be completely killed. In that ambush back then, the Shivaras did not appear on the Roth Empire's punishment list, but they should have received generous rewards from Josh. However, this guy is hiding like a turtle. He might not be so easy to deal with. Irina picked up a piece of chicken and took a bite. If there's no chance, I'll choose Bar Hill. Bar Hill. I heard that he likes to collect elven maids. Irina's voice and gaze turned cold at the same time. Meg narrowed his eyes. Most elves who fell into the hands of demons did not have a good ending, and collecting elves completely turned them into pets. He nodded slightly, and said, "Then, I'll choose him." Jane looked at Irina, and then at Meg. Although she did not understand anything, she had a feeling that they were very powerful. After the lunch service, Meg hung a sign on the door of the courtyard to prevent the enthusiastic students from disturbing him too early. He went upstairs to continue reading. The Cthulhu mythos system was very huge. Meg would need a lot of time to understand it in depth, but other than reading, he had no other good ideas at the moment. It's the third day since Mr. Mac left. I miss him. Vanessa held her chin and looked at the wind chimes swaying in the wind outside the window. Princess, I went to ask today. They said that Mr. Mac should be back soon. Laura comforted her softly. She also missed Mr. Mac. In the past few days when he was gone, the princess' appetite had decreased a lot. Laura, do you think I've fallen for Mr. Mac? I've never missed a man so much. Even when I'm sleeping, my mind is full of him. Vanessa turned around and looked at Laura. Are you sure you're not thinking about food, but Mr. Mac? Laura asked hesitantly. Vanessa's expression changed, and she muttered, although I've been thinking about food most of the time, if it wasn't for Mr. Mac, there wouldn't be food. That means you only like the food he makes, not Mr. Mac. Laura heaved a sigh of relief. Damn it, if her princess really fell in love with a chef, and a chef who already had a child, she would die when she went back. All right. Compared to Mr. Mac, I do like tofu pudding, braised chicken and rice, Yangzhou fried rice more. If you think about it, he's ranked in the top 10. Vanessa nodded. She felt an inexplicable sense of guilt. She didn't expect that she would let Mr. Mac down so much. She was really sorry. By the way, the Duke said that His Majesty sent you a letter urging you to go back to the palace. Are you really going to stay in the tower? Laura asked. What's so fun about going back to the palace? There's no one to play with me, and there's no delicious food. I'm going to rot if I stay in my room every day. Vanessa shook her head, and a bright smile appeared on her face. It's so nice here. Uncle Abraham takes me to eat delicious food every day, and the customers are so cute. It's so much more fun to eat with them than in the palace. Lola looked at Vanessa's smile, and swallowed the words that were at the tip of her tongue. A smile appeared at the corner of her lips. It was rare to see the princess smiling like that in the palace. Also, Mr. Meg promised to treat my teeth. I won't go back until my teeth are cured, Vanessa said matter-of-factly. Look, this is the 36th blood letter. If the boss doesn't come back soon, I think someone is going to hang themselves at the door. Yabamiya went out and came back with a stack of blood letters and various other letters that she tore off from the restaurant door. She looked at everyone helplessly and said, "It's been 3 days. Speaking of which, the boss rarely stays out for so long. I'm guessing that he and Amy won't come back today either." Barbara flipped a suspended plate with her finger, feeling bored. If the boss doesn't come back soon, the resentful customers might have a meeting to tear down the restaurant, Phyllis said worriedly. Not only Mr. Mac and Amy, but the princess had also left for a few days. Don't worry, they won't tear down the restaurant, Elizabeth said calmly. Elizabeth said calmly. If someone tried to do this, they would have to ask her if she agreed. Chapter 1365. In the evening, Meg heard a piece of news from the customers. The Abyss Demon Tribe and the Flaming Demon Tribe had officially started a war. Both sides were attacking and defending each other, and both sides suffered heavy losses. The news of Alfred and Simmons dying together last night and today had already shaken the Demon Islands. No one had expected that the war between the Abyss Demon Tribe and the Flaming Demon Tribe would start so quickly. Furthermore, it had skipped the probing step and directly entered the white-hot stage. Carapace Island was close to the sea region of the two tribes, but luckily, it wasn't affected by the war. However, it was imaginable that it wouldn't be able to maintain its peace for a while. Meg didn't like war, but rather than letting the two warlike tribes wreak havoc on the world, it was better to let them hurt each other. Therefore, he didn't feel any guilt in his heart for starting this war. Due to this battle, a hole was successfully torn in the main force that had already occupied the absolute advantage on the Demon Islands, and this hole was still worsening. Irina walked to Meg's side after hearing the demon's words, and said with interest, "Interesting. Why don't we go and watch the show tonight?" "Sure," Meg answered. He was also curious about how the war between the two demon tribes would be like. The crayfish they bought over the past few days were sold out very quickly. Meg rejected a few customers' requests to continue drinking. After Irina took out her stool, the restaurant quickly regained its silence. Meg summoned Ozzy, and threw the three beggars' chickens that he prepared earlier to it. Ozzy chewed and swallowed the meat along with the bones. It revealed a joyful and cheerful expression as it rubbed its head against Meg's hand and looked at him expectantly. "That's all. I'll give you something good to eat tomorrow." Meg smiled and patted Ozzy's head. "Oh, Ozzy let out a cheerful cry and bent down to let Meg and the others get on. "Let's go. We'll watch the show tonight." Meg picked up Amy and climbed onto the griffin's back. Irina also landed lightly behind Meg. Her slender hands naturally reached out from behind and wrapped around Meg's waist. The purple-striped griffin flapped its wings, and the enormous shadow disappeared from the sky above Carapace Island in the blink of an eye as it flew towards Flaming Devil Island. The Flaming Demon Island was filled with flames. Tonight, the flames were even more intense. The sounds of explosions and fighting could be heard from every direction of the island. Countless huge ships with abyssal demon flags were sailing towards Flame Island. Countless huge fireballs with red tails behind them exploded on the ships. The flames instantly ignited the entire ship. The Abyssal Knights did not even have time to ride their pigs into the sea before they were turned into ashes. Meanwhile, the ships that had reached the shore lowered their planks. The Abyss Trolls rode on the porcupine war boars and charged toward the Flaming Island, sweeping everything in their path. The epic battle scene made Meg gasp in amazement even though he was high up in the sky with his binoculars. This was a completely different style of war from modern warfare. There were abyssal demons and flaming demons dying every minute and every second. The brutality of the war was on full display at this moment. This was just a war between two demon tribes that were similar in strength. If it was magnified to the entire Norland continent, the war between the various tribes would definitely be even more brutal than this. The goblins, the dwarves, Chaos City. How were they going to face such an attack? "Do you feel guilty?" Irina suddenly asked. Since they chose war, this is where they belong. At least those tribes that yearn for peace don't have to bear the disaster that they brought. Meg shook his head. "I seem to have discovered some demons who are watching the show like us." Irina turned the binoculars in another direction with an interesting smile on her face. "Should we make the situation more chaotic?" Meg also saw some demons from other tribes who were riding on flying mounts and observing the battle from high up in the sky. There were many demons from the top 10 demon tribes among them. If we get rid of them all, it should be enough for them to wrangle for a while. Meg and Irina's eyes met, and a smile appeared on both of their faces at the same time. Student Amy, prepare the fireball spell. We should start moving again. Meg took out his mask and put it on his face. Assassin Amy, ready. Amy took out her magic wand and nodded her little head. Ah, Z, get all the flying mounts down from the sky as fast as you can. Remember to hide yourself well. Meg patted Ah Z's head gently. Ah Z retracted its wings and suddenly descended nearly 1,000 meters vertically. Then, it stomped a Shivara who was riding a 3-headed bird into the sea together with the bird. A red fireball followed closely behind, and exploded just before they fell into the water. In the darkness, the demons from various tribes who were ordered to observe the battle fell down like dumplings in water. Then, they would be followed up by a fireball spell. In less than 10 minutes, the sky was clear, and not a single flying mount could be seen. Let's go. This battle will probably last for a long time, Meg said softly. Ah Z quickly climbed up, and soon flew away from the flaming demon island sea region. Although the Abyss demon tribe's overall strength was stronger than the flaming demon tribes, the difference wasn't to the extent that they could crush the flaming demon tribe completely. As long as they didn't reconcile, this battle wouldn't end in a short time. Ah Z flew toward the northwest. As the most powerful demon tribe, the Fear Demons occupied the 3 large islands in the center of the Demon Islands, and named them the Fear Islands. Ah Z circled a few times above the Fear Islands. In view of the auras of several 10th tier powerhouses below, Meg finally chose to retreat cautiously. Even if he couldn't defeat them, Meg had never been afraid of anyone before. However, it was best to hide the fact that he and Irina appeared on the Demon Islands. Otherwise, it would be easy for people with ulterior motives to link them to what happened on the Demon Islands during this period of time. This wouldn't be beneficial to the implementation of the plan. After that, Meg and the others went to Destruction Island. The terrain of Destruction Island was complicated, so it was obviously more difficult to find the cunning and cautious Weston. Moreover, there were also 5 to 6 10th tier powerhouses on the island. That old tortoise hiding is really annoying, Irina said angrily as she looked down. Let's find another chance in the future, Meg said, and gestured for Ozzy to return. After returning to the lobster restaurant, Meg washed up, and was about to read a book and sleep when there was a knock on the door downstairs. Meg pulled open the curtains and looked down. It was the High Priest of Lantist, Dexter. Hence, he casually put on some clothes and went downstairs to open the door. Honorable Mr. Meg, this is our harvest for the past 2 days. Please check it. Dexter took out a huge vat from the crystal bowl. There were dozens of crayfish in it. Chapter 1366. Meg's eyes lit up as he looked at the crayfish in the big vat. They were bigger than normal crayfish, and their bellies were red when he flipped them over. They were the breeding prawns that he was looking for. Furthermore, they should have just been caught from the sea. They were very active as they were waving their big pincers around happily. Meg counted them carefully. There were a total of 45 of them. In addition to the breeding prawns that he had received from the fishermen, the number of breeding prawns that he had with him had already reached 62. It had completely exceeded the number of breeding prawns that he had obtained after bargaining with the system. There are a total of 45 of them. When I go back in a few days, I will prepare 5,000 mud casings and send them to you as soon as possible. Meg looked at Dexter in a good mood, and smilingly said, "The number of prawns is already enough. Thank you for making this trip. It's our honor to serve you. Lantis thanks you for your generosity, Dexter said with a smile. Although he had mobilized almost all the people of Lantis who could leave the seal, including 10 10th-tier powerhouses, to capture these tiny prawns, these 5,000 mud casings were equivalent to 5,000 mud casings. However, to Lantis, obtaining 5,000 mud casings was equivalent to obtaining 5,000 places and opportunities to leave the seal. This was a very worthwhile trade. Do you want to come in and have a seat? It's all right, Mr. Mag. It's time for you to rest, too. I will visit you personally in Chaos City after some time. Dexter took a look at Mag's pajamas, and bade him farewell with a smile. Meg was indeed just being polite. He watched Dexter leave before returning to the restaurant with the outline. The progress of catching the breeding prawns in his mind had already become 62/50ths, which meant that the catching mission was already completed. The only thing left to do was to promote the cooking method of crayfish and develop the habit of eating crayfish. Eating crayfish on Carapace Island was in the limelight, and its influence was expanding rapidly. Although the progress of the culinary skills of the 10 apprentices was different, their progress was still considered gratifying. After the last learning session tomorrow, the apprentices who passed the test could start their own crayfish restaurant. System, what should I do with these prawns? Meg asked in his mind as he looked at the prawns that he had painstakingly caught. Previously, the system had used a chance to use the submarine to exchange for a breeding shrimp from Meg. If he could exchange the extra 12 shrimp for something from the system, it would at least be better than a barbecue. Host, please carry out a pollution-free treatment, the system replied. You don't want it. Meg was a little surprised. These crayfish that have left the crayfish farm are no longer pure. They may have been infected with some unknown viruses and parasites. The system will not recycle them, the system replied. If it's not harmful to the environment, then I can only eat it. Meg sighed. It seemed that it was impossible to extort money from the system. At the same time, in order to respond to the call of the heavens and cultivate the host's awareness of environmental protection, the system has decided that from today onwards, the garbage produced by the host will be sorted and recycled. The host needs to sort the garbage before putting it in, otherwise the system will not recycle it and will impose a fine on the host. Meg was stunned. After all, he had studied abroad for many years. Meg was not unfamiliar with garbage sorting. However, the system had never made such an excessive request before. Now that it suddenly responded to the call, it really made him a little unprepared. In this world where plastic bags had not yet appeared, it was really a little strange to carry out garbage sorting. System, what kind of garbage are you? How would the system know? Well, you said you want to carry out garbage sorting and recycling. Then let me test you. Meg raised the corner of his mouth. The system has thoroughly studied the spirit of the heavens. The system was full of confidence. What are the types of garbage sorting? Recyclable garbage, harmful garbage, wet garbage, and dry garbage. What kind of garbage is dry nuts? Dry garbage. Wrong, it's wet garbage. Question, what kind of garbage is glue? It's definitely wet garbage. The system said with certainty. Wrong again, it's dry garbage. Question, what kind of garbage are dried meat, red dates, and flour respectively? Dry garbage, dry garbage, dry garbage. Wrong, they're all wet garbage. Meg shook his head and smiled with some contempt. Perishable biomass and household waste are all wet garbage. System, you're not very professional in learning. With your level, we'd better pack them together and dispose of them. It's easy to cause secondary pollution if you dispose of them carelessly. No, this is just a small mistake. The system must strictly carry out the requirements of garbage sorting. The system refused. You ask again. Well, then I'll ask you one last question. Now I have a plastic bowl with the leftovers and rat poison from a few days ago. After poisoning the rats, I'm going to throw them away. How should I dispose and sort them when throwing them away? Gee, there was a burst of static in Meg's mind. The system interface in his mind turned blue, and a series of meaningless numbers slid past. Although garbage sorting is beneficial for a long time, it's still a long way to go. Meg sighed and was too lazy to care about the system that had crashed. He poured the rest of the crayfish into the water tank in the kitchen. The taste of the breeding crayfish was better than the ordinary crayfish. It was not easy to catch it, so it was better to keep it for himself. The invasion of Inferno Island by the abyssal demons encountered very tenacious resistance. Tens of thousands of abyssal knights charged towards Inferno Island, tearing apart the defensive line of the abyssal demons again and again, but they were all blocked, leaving behind roasted pigs on the ground. The sun at dawn gradually rose from the sea level. The abyss demons, who had been fighting fiercely for a night, finally heard the horn of retreat. The fireballs that flew out of Flaming Island also became sparse. The flaming demons, who were also exhausted, did not chase after the abyss demons. This was a sudden war. Neither side was fully prepared, but they carried out an extremely tragic attack and defense battle last night. All the places that could be landed on Flaming Island were left with corpses. None of the races had expected this sudden war to break the peace before the peace talks. Just a few days ago, when they had gathered at the bottom of the abyss, Alfred and Simmons had been drinking to their heart's content. Of course, they did not expect that they would be involved in this dispute so easily. This was because none of the diplomatic demons that they sent to the scene of the war had returned. This was not a big matter, but it was not a small matter either. However, no matter what, it still represented the reputation of a race. The various races could not pretend that nothing had happened. Hence, they all sent serious inquiries to the abyss demons and the flaming demons. It's another good day. Meg pushed open the window, and the sunlight shone on his face with a gentle smile. They would have to return to Chaos City in 2 more days. He wondered if Mia and the rest were doing well. Chapter 1367. Meg looked at the apprentices with a smile, and said, "Today, I will provide each of you with 10 crayfish and a small pot. If any of you can reach the graduation standard, you can open a second crayfish restaurant on Carapace Island or anywhere else." All the demons' eyes lit up. Opening a crayfish restaurant was the reason why they came to learn how to cook crayfish from Meg. They originally thought that Meg would order them around as free labor for a period of time, but they didn't expect him to be willing to let them open their own crayfish restaurants after they learned how to cook. "Can we open it on Carapace Island?" Qatar asked expectantly. "Yes, you can open it anywhere you want." Meg nodded with a smile. He was going to leave soon anyway, so it would be best if they could open up a business outside of Carapace Island. "That's great. Then I can go back to my hometown and open a crayfish restaurant." Ivan's eyes lit up. He didn't plan to stay on Carapace Island any longer, so he brought his wife and son back to his hometown. Although the rocky island was a little remote, the crayfish was a great supplement to them. The price would definitely be higher than on Carapace Island. Meg then started teaching as usual. Of course, now that everyone had entered the practical stage, he was mainly in charge of giving pointers and correcting the demons' mistakes. Among these apprentices, Qatar was the one who learned the fastest and did the best. An aroma wafted out when he opened the pot lid. A bright red crayfish was lying quietly in the pot. He collected the juice with a large flame, turned off the fire, and scooped the whole crayfish out. He poured the remaining juice in the pot over the crayfish, and his simplified 13-spice crayfish was done. "Boss, try it," Qatar said to Meg expectantly as he held the big bowl with both hands and placed it on the table at the side. Meg walked forward and fanned the hot air with his hand. He broke off one of the pincers, and the juice seeped in through the cracks on the pincers. The flesh of the crayfish was dyed a nice brown. He dipped it in the juice and put it in his mouth to take a bite. The improved version of 13 Spice still had a very good taste and fragrance. Although there were some differences in the layers of taste compared to the enhanced version of 13 Spice, it was still a spice with a unique taste. Numbness, spiciness, freshness, fragrance, and sweetness were all present. The texture and heat control of the prawn meat were also quite good. Although the prawn meat was a little tough, it wouldn't be obvious if one didn't taste it carefully. Not bad, Meg confirmed as he raised his head and looked at Qatar, who was full of expectation after finishing a pincer. Qatar was the one who had practiced the most out of all the apprentices, and he was also the most diligent. Being able to reach this level was somewhat out of Meg's expectations, but it was also within reason. Qatar's face lit up with joy. His voice trembled as he said, Then am I considered to have graduated? Not yet. Meg shook his head, and continued, When stir-frying, the heat is too high, and the frequency of stir-frying is too low. If there are 10 crayfish in the wok instead of 1, this shortcoming will be magnified 10 times. The timing of adding 13 spice needs to be more precise. Too early or too late will affect the absorption of the flavor of the crayfish meat. Qatar nodded as if he had learned something. Although he was denied, he didn't look disappointed at all. He washed the wok, heated the oil, and continued practicing. Soon, the other apprentices finished cooking their crayfish. Meg tasted them one by one, and none of them were as good as Qatar's. The problem was still there. The demon's talent in cooking was indeed not high, but Meg didn't intend to use his own standards to limit them. After all, not everyone was as outstanding as him. Meg obtained some of the latest news about the Abyss demons and the Flaming demons from the customers. Although the major races didn't participate directly, they started arguing with each other because of the unexplained deaths of their own diplomatic demons. The situation on the Demon Islands became a little tense. Of course, the most explosive news on Carapace Island was that the Abyss Demon's office on Carapace Island attacked the Flaming Demon's office last night and killed all the Flaming Demons. The other 8 palaces worked together to detain the demons in the Abyss Demon's office, but it was still unknown how they would deal with this matter. Carapace Island, which wasn't at the center of the war, also welcomed a feeling of a coming storm. Many demons were worried. Tony wasn't affected by the war at all. He looked at Meg with a smile, and said, Boss, I've already sent the article about your crayfish to the editors of the major gourmet magazines. If nothing goes wrong, it will be published in a few days. When that time comes, your crayfish restaurant will definitely be full every day. How are you going to thank me? I see. Meg muttered. Speaking of which, he might not be on Carapace Island in a few days. He didn't know how to thank this enthusiastic former colleague of his. It would be fine if that article didn't become popular, but if it did, those customers who came because of its reputation might want to kill him in front of the ruins. Meg suddenly looked at Tony with sympathy, and said, How about this? I'll give you 3 crayfish, 1 for each flavor. It would be good to go after eating. Maybe he would be cursed to death by the reader's resentment, and step on landmines every day in his next life. Thinking about it, it would be the beginning of another tragic life. Serves him right. Sure, then I won't stand on ceremony. Tony's eyes lit up. He was just casually mentioning it, and didn't expect Meg to really agree. Anyway, he had helped Meg publicize it, and with his influence, i.e. Crayfish Restaurant would become the most popular restaurant on the Demon Islands. He would have no qualms about eating these 3 crayfish. Qatar, Cassis. The 6 of you have passed. Of course, it's just passing. There's still a long way to go before you can make crayfish that can truly be called delicious. However, this will take time and continuous practice to accumulate. During this process, you can choose to open your own crayfish restaurant first. Meg smiled at Qatar and the other 5 students. He reached out to shake hands with them and said, "Congratulations on your graduation." "Thank you." Qatar bowed deeply to Meg with unconcealable excitement on his face. He couldn't wait to go to the blacksmith's shop to carry that custom-made walk home, open a crayfish restaurant immediately, and then go to the beach to catch dozens of crayfish. The other demons were also very excited, and expressed their gratitude to Meg one after another. Meanwhile, Ivan and the other 3 demons who were left behind because they didn't pass looked a little dejected. "Boss, what should we do? Are we going to be eliminated just like this?" Ivan asked weakly as he looked at Meg. He recalled Gamina's harsh words. If they were eliminated just like this, he didn't dare to imagine what he would have to face when he returned. "The crayfish that the 4 of you made didn't meet the minimum requirement to be served to the customers. I will give you an extra day of lessons, but you have to buy the crayfish for tomorrow's practice. If you still don't meet the requirement, then this is the only way," Meg said to Ivan and the other demons. He was also very helpless when facing students with poor talent. Chapter 1368. A full moon hung on the surface of the sea. A dark red cloud floated by, dyeing it with a trace of scarlet moonlight, sprinkling on the top of the ancient castle. "Let me out." A scarlet blade slashed at the black fog-like barrier, and only a few ripples appeared on the barrier. Camilla's hands drooped down weakly. With her strength, it was impossible for her to destroy this barrier. From here, she could see that the castle servants were busy preparing for the wedding. A grand wedding was about to begin, and she was the female lead, but she did not feel the slightest bit of joy. "Ha!" Camilla slowly clenched her fists, and her sharp nails dug into her flesh. She sneered and muttered to herself, "Do you think that everything will go according to your wishes after the wedding? You forced me to marry, so don't blame me for ruining this wedding. That kid Knox is not bad, Camilla. Why don't you like him?" A black figure leaned on the edge of the castle. His index finger and thumb were holding a transparent crystal glass, and the scarlet red wine was gently rippling in the glass. He looked back at Camilla with a faint smile. He had neat slicked-back hair, a high-nose bridge, and sapphire blue eyes. He was wearing a fitting black suit, and he looked like a gentleman. "Uncle Dracula." Camilla's eyes lit up, and she immediately moved to the front of the barrier. Her voice lowered by a few notches. "Let me out, please." "That won't do. If I let you go, then the one locked up here will be me." Dracula shook his head and sighed softly. "You know that no one can change your father's decision. Can you bear to see me being pushed into the fire pit by him again?" Camilla bit her lips. Dracula took a sip of the red wine in the glass, and with a twist of his finger, the transparent glass spun on his fingertip, and the scarlet red wine splashed on the barrier. Chee! With a soft sound, the barrier that sealed Camilla melted into thin air. "This is..." Camilla looked at the melting barrier in disbelief. She then looked up at Dracula, and exclaimed, "Uncle Dracula, you've broken through." "No matter what, I was the #1 prodigy of the vampires back then, and was seen as the one with the highest chance of becoming a vampire ancestor," Dracula said proudly as he twirled the crystal cup on his fingertips. "And you've obtained the primogenitor bloodline." Camilla looked at the scarlet bat tattoo on Dracula's right middle finger. It looked as if it was formed from blood and had a bloodthirsty aura. She was even more shocked. "In order to save you, I took a risk." Dracula combed his swept-back hair gloomily. "Uncle Dracula, I know you treat me the best." Camilla hugged Dracula happily. Count looked at Camilla. Back then, the little fellow who liked to climb up his long legs had unknowingly grown into a young lady. Last time, he didn't stand in front of her to protect her. This time, he couldn't let himself regret it a second time. "Let's go. I'll bring you to a place," Dracula said with a relaxed expression. "Do you want to escape with me?" Camilla asked, a little puzzled. "I'm now a vampire chosen by the primogenitor bloodline. Even your father can't do anything to me." Dracula shook his head, and the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a pair of sharp fangs. He smiled as he whispered, "Do you still remember the primogenitor's inheritance method? It's passed down by blood." Camilla nodded. Suddenly, her acting skills lit up, and she said, "You mean, let's go?" "I think that old thing from the Bartoli family will be very surprised when he sees us." Dracula waved his hand gently, and the previously melted barrier was restored to its original state. He grabbed Camilla's arm with one hand, and also turned into a cloud of black fog and disappeared from the roof of the ancient castle. Not long after, a bat patrolled around the tower. After confirming that the barrier was intact, it disappeared again. On another island, there was also an ancient castle built on top of a cliff. The wind and rain left scars on it, and a few bats flew across the sky from time to time. "Remember, Nox. Don't be bewitched by that bitch Camilla. She definitely had something to do with your brother's sudden death back then. She's just a stepping stone for you to become the king of vampires." In the hall of the ancient castle, an elderly vampire sitting on a high seat looked at the young blonde vampire standing in the middle of the hall and said coldly. "I'll remember," Nox said respectfully. However, he couldn't suppress the excitement in his eyes. The woman he had been thinking about for so many years was finally going to belong to him. Just thinking about it made him unable to suppress his excitement. "You may leave. Prepare for the wedding. Maynard doesn't have a son. The future of the vampires belongs to you." Giles raised his hand. Nox bowed respectfully, and left the hall. Giles was the only one left in the spacious hall. The scarlet light dyed the hall with a layer of eerie light. He sat high on the bone throne. Time had left deep wrinkles on his face. Even the most delicious blood couldn't fill these gullies. As the ancestor of the vampires, Giles had already lived for more than 1,300 years. This was a very long time. No one in the vampires had lived longer than him. Even the Great Elder was 300 years younger than him. Giles gently stroked the red bat on his right middle finger. The wrinkled skin made it slightly deformed. The original bright red color had turned dark red. He still remembered the bloodthirsty look of this bat when his grandfather passed on the bloodline to him. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. When Nox gets married, this bloodline should be passed on to him. Giles muttered to himself softly. A smile flashed across his wooden face. "I'm sorry, but this wish of yours may not be fulfilled." A voice echoed in the hall. Black fog condensed in the center of the hall. Dracula appeared in the center of the hall with Camilla. He flashed a middle finger at Giles with a smile on his face. "Equals convex, the ancestor bloodline has chosen me." Giles looked at Dracula's middle finger. That scarlet bat reminded him of himself when he received the ancestor bloodline's recognition. What a surprise. The ancestor's bloodline has chosen your family again. Giles grinned, revealing a pair of sharp fangs. His expression didn't change at all because of Dracula and Camilla's arrival. "I'm here to break off the engagement for Camilla, and to take away what belongs to me." Dracula retracted his middle finger, and smiled at Giles gracefully. "Just based on a grass-eating little fellow like you." Giles raised his right hand, and the crimson light from the wall lamp intensified instantly. The temperature in the hall dropped abruptly, and the ground and roof began to freeze. "Nox and Camilla's wedding will be held on time. You can't take away what you want." Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1369. Light and shadow crisscrossed in the hall, and the huge wings cast a shadow on the wall, emitting a terrifying aura. All the sound stopped in that instant. Dracula slowly released his teeth from Giles' neck, and reached out to wipe away the crimson blood at the corner of his mouth. His red eyes gradually regained their blue color. Giles' bone-like body fell to the ground, and quickly turned into black powder. Camilla, who was standing in the corner, watched this scene in shock. A generation of vampire ancestors had come to an end, and a new ancestor was born. And the one who did all this was actually Uncle Dracula, who had been mocked for eating grass all these years. Irina is right. Eating vegetarian food occasionally is good for health. At least the blood won't be so viscous, Dracula murmured as he rinsed his mouth with a cup of water that he got from somewhere. Uncle Dracula, you are considered half a grandmaster now. You should pay more attention to your image, Camilla reminded. That's right, Dracula replied and gulped down the mouthwash. Camilla and Dracula looked at each other for 10 seconds, and then laughed at the same time. Dracula glanced at the door, and smiled at Camilla. Judging from the commotion, they should all be here. You can go first. Go wherever you want to go. Leave this place to me. Let me finish what I couldn't do back then this time. Camilla looked at Dracula with reddened eyes. She opened her arms and hugged Dracula tightly, and softly said, "Thank you, Uncle. Little lass, you are my only niece." Dracula patted Camilla's back gently with a smile. With a gentle push, the black fog shrouded Camilla, and they disappeared from the hole. Almost at the same time, a group of vampires broke through the door. Camilla appeared in the sky above the sea 1,000 meters away. She looked in the direction of the castle, and could clearly hear the sounds of fighting. She flapped her wings, and quickly disappeared into the night. The power of a vampire ancestor was not something that a normal 10th-tier vampire could compare to, even if it was just a newly advanced ancestor. And now, she could only return to Chaos City first. At least she could get some peace there. Mond looked at Sargeras and asked, "Boss, the Flaming Demons and the Abyss Demons went through a tough battle and suffered heavy losses. Should we take advantage of this opportunity to counterattack Flaming Island and take back our territory?" The lava demon's eyes were also sparkling. Sargeras shook his head with a calm expression, and said, "Even if it's the Flaming Demons who just fought a great battle with the Abyss Demons, we are not their match, let alone the ability to take back Lava Island." All the lava demons were silent. Although the Holy Lava Badge had removed more than half of the curse on their bodies, none of them had broken through to 8th tier except for Sargeras, who had broken through to 9th tier. To attack the Scorching Flame Island with such strength, it was indeed a suicidal act. Keel said worriedly, "Boss, what should we do now? The Blaze race has already discovered us. Once their war with the Abyss Devil race stops, they will definitely send more people." Sargeras stood up, and loudly said, "Everyone, pack your things. We will leave this place tonight. Since we have already obtained the Sacred Lava Badge, there is no need to continue guarding this place." "Sargeras, where do you want to take us?" the Great Elder asked in a hoarse voice. "Chaos City." Sargeras raised the Holy Lava Badge in his hand, and loudly shouted, "The Burning Legion. For the Holy Ruggiamo." All the lava demons shouted in unison. "One of the ancestors of the vampires is dead. Dracula has become the new ancestor of the vampires." Meg was really shocked when he heard the news the next morning. He also heard an even more important piece of news. Camilla was actually going to marry her ex-husband's brother. However, she seemed to have disappeared in the chaos last night. "Camilla has returned to the vampires?" Meg murmured. It seemed like Camilla had also returned home when he was away, but was suddenly going to be married off. Since she had disappeared, it meant that she was most likely not satisfied with the wedding. That grass-eating Dracula has actually become the new ancestor of the vampires. He is really something. I made a lot of money by feeding him grass back then. Irina was also shocked when she heard the news. You. Meg did not know how to comment. He had heard this story when Dracula came to Chaos City to participate in the mediation between the two races. However, when he heard it again from Irina, it was a completely different feeling. How could she toy with the ancestor of the vampires like that? Why don't we catch him and feed him grass again? He is in the limelight now. This time, we will double the ticket price. There will definitely be a lot of people coming to watch, Irina suddenly said softly as she came forward. Meg saw that Irina did not seem to be joking. He quickly waved his hand and said, "This. Let's forget it. If we really do that, the vampires will fight us to the death." Dracula was just an unimportant 9th-tier vampire back then. It was fine if he ate grass. For the sake of Irina, Alex, and the elves, the vampires could swallow their anger. However, Dracula was the ancestor of the vampires now. According to the inheritance method of the ancestor of the vampires, his status was not below that of the chief. He represented the face of the vampires. It would be too much to capture him and make him into a grass-eating exhibition. All right. Irina waved her hand in boredom. What a good pastime. That was the ancestor of the vampires who ate grass. After a day of overtime training, Ivan and the other demons successfully graduated under Meg's pretense of turning a blind eye. Thank you for furthering my studies, Boss Hades. I will never forget you in my life. I thank your ancestors. Ivan held Meg's hand, and was so emotional that he lost the logic of speech. The other 3 demons also expressed their gratitude to Meg. Although they knew that the crayfish they made could not be compared to Meg's, they were still confident that they could attract some customers if they opened a crayfish restaurant on another island. You're welcome. Meg smiled and shook his head. Although it was only a short 3 days of contact, Meg was still in a good mood as they were about to part. He could finally send these idiots away. Oh, yes. Ivan, I have a gift for you. Meg said to Ivan, who was the last to leave. He entered the restaurant, and soon came out with 2 large breeding prawns, 1 male and 1 female. This is... Ivan looked at Meg in confusion. These are 2 breeding prawns. You said you wanted to go back to your hometown to start a business. If you don't have crayfish there, you can bring these 2 breeding prawns back to cultivate. Although it will take a long time, you don't have to worry about not having enough ingredients as long as it reaches a certain scale, Meg said with a smile. Ah, thank you so much. Ivan's eyes lit up, and he took the breeding prawns from Meg like they were treasures. Chapter 1370. The long line at the entrance of the crayfish restaurant had already stretched very far before the dinner service started. These crayfish, which cost 100 copper coins each, had already become the most popular delicacy on Carapace Island. Even the war between the Abyss Demons and the Flaming Tribe, and the 10 Kings Palace, which was extremely busy, didn't affect everyone's love for crayfish at all. A glass of cold beer and a plate of crayfish had already become the latest and most stylish way to gather on Carapace Island. The demons who were usually arrogant and bad-tempered seemed to have restrained their bad-tempered personalities consciously here. Firstly, it was because the lady boss here was even more bad-tempered than them, and the stool in her hand was so powerful that it was unreasonable. Secondly, everyone seemed to have some sort of tacit understanding. Enjoying the delicious food in a restaurant like this was the most basic form of respect for delicacies. The area covered by the crayfish's reputation, Carapace Island, has been reached. The area covered is 30 kilometers. The system's notification sounded in Meg's mind. System, your calculation method isn't quite right. Many of the customers who came to the crayfish restaurant these few days came from other islands, and it seems to be expanding rapidly. It shouldn't be categorized as Carapace Island, right? Meg raised his brow. He estimated that there would be over 1,000 demons tonight, and his 10 apprentices had already graduated. He was preparing to return to Chaos City, but according to the system's calculation, his mission wasn't completed yet. The number of customers from other islands is indeed on the rise these few days, but the base number is still small. Furthermore, it hasn't established a strong enough influence in other regions, and the customers haven't developed the habit of eating crayfish yet. Therefore, the area covered is still limited to Carapace Island, the system answered. Meg frowned. The system's words made sense. He thought for a while, and said, "Oh, right. A gourmet called Tony wrote a special article for crayfish yesterday. System, can you assess what kind of impact this article will have after it's released? Can it create a craze for eating crayfish?" Tony is a renowned food critic, and the most renowned food critic on the Demon Islands. He has the title of "No one knows seafood better than him," and he has a huge number of fans on the Demon Islands and the Norland continent. All of the food that he has written about will become a hot topic in a short period of time. If he writes a special article about crayfish and publishes it in all the major gourmet magazines, there's a high probability that it will cause a craze for crayfish consumption, and bring in a blowout of IE crayfish restaurant, the system commented. I didn't expect him to be a powerful VIP. Meg raised his eyebrows and was a little surprised. He then smiled and said, "Then, with such traffic and influence, it definitely covers a range of 300 kilometers. Since the influence has been achieved, my mission should be completed, right?" The system was silent for a while, then it said, "According to the system's calculation, the influence of this gourmet article has reached the goal of promoting the consumption of crayfish and turning it into a trend. After conversion, it can offset the influence of 300 square kilometers to cover the mission option. Mission option achieved. Crayfish catching mission progress, 62/50ths, achieved. Ding! Congratulations, host. You've completed the crayfish catching mission. You've received the title of Crayfish Hunter and 0.5 physical strength point as a reward. Meg glanced at the shiny title of Crayfish Hunter in his mind and directly swept it aside. His eyes lit up as he looked at the physical strength point. Finally, he received another physical strength point. As long as he absorbed this 0.5 physical strength point and survived the lightning punishment, he would officially break through to level 9. He was only one step away from returning to his peak state. After living together with Irina, he increasingly felt the importance of being powerful. If he wasn't powerful enough, his wife wouldn't listen to him. When would he be able to lie there like a big boss and watch Irina walk over with a smile while using her slender hands to wash his feet? What are you thinking about? Irina appeared beside him out of nowhere and patted his shoulder. Washing my feet. Meg, who was immersed in his imagination, blurted out. He opened his eyes and met Irina's smiling eyes. His heart instantly thumped a few times, and he cursed in his heart. You want me to wash your feet? Irina asked with a smile. She looked at Meg's eyes as if she could see through his thoughts. How is that possible? I'm just reflecting on the fact that I didn't wash your feet well enough last time. There's still room for improvement. Meg shook his head with a serious face. If that's the case, it's okay. I can give you another chance. Irina smiled sweetly and said, Then I'll have to trouble you to wash my feet tonight. Okay. Meg's smile had a hint of bitterness. What could he do? He had created this sin himself, and he still had to swallow this bitter fruit himself. By the way, I'm going out tonight. Will Ozzy come over? Irina asked again. I told it yesterday that I've prepared something delicious for it today. Meg nodded. He looked at her, and asked, "Are you going to Destruction Island?" "No, it's another place. I went to Fell Island in the afternoon, and confirmed that there's a stronghold where elves are being held captive. I plan to kill those scum tonight, and then rescue my people and bring them back to Chaos City." Irina shook her head. Although her expression was still calm, her tone was exceptionally cold. "All right, I'll go with you tonight." Meg nodded with a solemn expression. He had once exterminated a stronghold of demons with Amy who hunted wandering elves. He knew how evil those fellows were, and also understood the kind of torture and pain the elves had to endure in such a place. Irina nodded, and did not refuse. "Oh, right. System, what happens if someone tries to stop the process when I'm struck by lightning?" Meg suddenly asked curiously in his mind. "Then he'll suffer a backlash that's several times stronger. This magnitude is related to the intensity of his intervention. The greater the intervention, the greater the backlash," the system answered. After that, it warned him sternly, "Host, please do not try to use external forces to resist the lightning. If the lightning doesn't go through your body, it won't stimulate your cells to upgrade and reorganize, and you won't be able to recover your strength and level up." "I know that." Meg understood, but the corners of his lips curled up. "Seems like I've wasted a lot of good opportunities in the past. This time, I have to find a good place to transcend my tribulation. After we're done with that stronghold tonight, let's make another trip to Fear Island and talk to Bar Hill," Meg said to Irina. Irina looked at Meg in surprise. They had made a trip to Fear Island the night before, but they had to give up the plan because they were outnumbered. "I have an idea. Maybe we can give it a try," Meg said with a smile. Chapter 1371. Night fell again. Jane was cleaning up the mess left behind by the restaurant's closing hours, while Meg and his family of 3 were already on the balcony. "Little Amy, we're going to take care of the bad guys again tonight to maintain world peace. Are you ready?" Meg squatted down and helped Amy tidy up her night clothes. He looked at her eyes that were peeking out from under the black triangular scarf and black headgear, and asked seriously, "I'm an emotionless killer." Amy nodded coldly. "That's not right." Meg looked at Amy and felt that this girl's style had been completely led astray by her mother. "Isn't that cool?" Amy looked at Meg with a puzzled expression. "That's right. We're emotionless killers who specialize in killing bad guys," Irina said coldly. She had already removed her disguise and was back in her long white dress. Meg looked at the mother and daughter and smiled helplessly. All right, he also had the intention to cultivate Amy's character of punishing evil and upholding kindness. There was nothing wrong with learning from her mother. "Aw-zee." Meg waved his hand, and Aw-zee descended from the sky like a bolt of purple lightning. It spread its wings and landed quietly on the balcony. Although it retracted its wings slightly, it still covered the entire balcony. "Come." Meg threw the 10 beggars' chickens that he had prepared beforehand to Aw-zee. Aw-zee chewed them one by one, and its tail swayed unconsciously. It even looked at Meg expectantly after it finished eating. "I'm done. I'll make more for you next time." Meg patted Aw-zee's head with a smile. With its appetite, 10 beggars' chickens could only be considered as a supper that wasn't enough for it. "Oh whoa." Aw-zee rubbed its head against Meg's palm intimately. Although it wasn't satisfied, it was still very grateful. "Then let's set off." Meg carried Amy and jumped onto Aw-zee's back. Irina also jumped on. Aw-zee flapped its wings and rose into the sky, disappearing from the sky above Carapace Island in the blink of an eye. The wind is so strong all of a sudden. Jane, who had just gathered the garbage together, quickly reached out and pressed down on her skirt. She looked up with some confusion. There was still a distant moon hanging in the sky, so she continued to clean up the garbage. Not far away, two black figures poked their heads out of the alley and looked in the direction of the crayfish restaurant. "Are we going to do it now?" a demon whispered. "Let's wait a little longer. We'll make our move when they've all fallen asleep," another demon whispered. "That lady boss and that chick are really beautiful. After we get the money, let's have some fun before leaving." "Hee, your thoughts are the same as mine. They earn tens of thousands of copper coins a day. With this money, we can live freely wherever we go." Two deep chuckles echoed in the alley. The purple-striped griffin flew all the way to the north. About 400 miles away, a crimson-red island appeared in their sight. Fell Island, the territory of the Fell Demons. As the seventh strongest tribe among the demons, the Fell Demons were known for their evil and powerful talent. They could absorb the strength of others for their own use. Their talent was evil, and their strength grew rapidly. 100 miles north of Fell Island, there was a nameless island. There were many strange rocks on the island, and it looked like an uninhabited island. Even demons could not be seen. "There it is," Irina said in a cold voice as she pointed at the black uninhabited island on the sea. "Ah Z, go down." Meg patted Ah Z's back gently, and Ah Z immediately dove down. As they got closer, Meg felt the presence of demons. It seemed that Irina's information was right. There was indeed something hidden on this uninhabited island. Ah Z glided at a low altitude close to the uninhabited island. Irina closed her eyes, and her powerful mind power surged down like water waves. The entrance to the crypt is there. There are a total of 40 demons. The strongest is a level 8 demon, and the rest are just small fries. The elves are trapped in the rock cave in the crypt. There are a total of 320 of them, Irina said softly as she opened her eyes. "Ah Z, go to the entrance," Meg ordered. "Ah whoa." Ah Z howled, and turned into a purple lightning bolt, flying quickly toward the entrance of the cave. At the entrance of the cave, a demon was taking a nap. He opened his eyes in a daze when he heard the sound, and then he saw a gigantic griffin descending from the sky. "Enemy," before he could finish his sentence, a huge claw had pressed on his head, and he was directly pressed into the ground. There was a flurry of footsteps in the tunnel, and Meg had already walked in with his sword. The scuffle was not intense, because it was just a one-sided massacre. In a short period of time, the dozen or so demons in the tunnel had been cleaned up by Meg, and the alarm finally sounded in the cave. "A silent death is too merciful for them," Irina said coldly as she looked at the sealed tunnel. Meg put away his long sword and stepped aside. Irina walked forward slowly, holding a stool in her hand. Amy followed behind her, holding a tall magic caster's staff with both hands. "Boss, there are enemies invading the crypt." A demon hurriedly rushed into a cave, and saw a fell demon tying a naked elf to a wooden frame with a blood-stained whip in his hand. "What are you panicking for? This is the territory of us fell demons. Who dares to invade?" That fell demon casually whipped the elf, leaving a bright bloody mark on her snow-white body. Accompanied by a painful groan, his eyes became more and more excited. "But our brothers outside are all dead. We have sealed the tunnel, but the enemies may come in very soon." That demon was still a little flustered. They were hired by the fell demons and had the protection of the big tree. Such an invasion had never happened before. Useless. That fell demon threw the whip on the ground, and reached out to pinch the elf's face that was tied to the wooden frame, and said with a hideous smile, "Little baby, I will play with you in a while. In a few days, I will have to send you all away. There are not many chances like this." Bah! That elf spat a mouthful of bloody saliva on the fell demon's face, and looked at him coldly. Princess Irina will kill you all sooner or later. Irina. She can't even protect herself. Who can she kill? Maybe in the future, I will also have the chance to tie her up here like you and play with her. The fell demon wiped the saliva off his face, and his expression gradually became hideous as he raised his right hand. Boom! A loud noise sounded in the tunnel, and a blinding holy light lit up the dark crypt. Holy light, purify these filthy demons. A cold voice sounded. Chapter 1372. The demons melted in the holy light, and their screams echoed throughout the cave. The dazzling holy light illuminated the cave, and it also illuminated the eyes of the elves who were curled up in the corners of the cave. They slowly walked to the railing and watched the demons who had tortured them in every possible way melt slowly under the holy light. They were struggling and howling in pain. At the entrance of the tunnel, Irina, who was wearing a white dress, was like a goddess who had descended, purifying all evil existences. Princess Irina. It's Princess Irina. Some elves recognized Irina and shouted in surprise. The elves came to the front of the railing from the corners of the cave, and their eyes were shining with hope. Even the dazzling holy light could not make them close their eyes. In this dark cave, they were tortured by pain every day. They were physically and mentally exhausted, and they did not have any hope. They wanted to end their lives countless times. But now, Princess Irina had appeared in the cave and brought the holy light into the cave, illuminating their eyes. It was like a dream. Many elves subconsciously pinched themselves, and the clear pain made them sure that this was not a dream. Cheers rang out in the cave. The elves looked at the demons who were struggling in the holy light, and the anger in their hearts was relieved. Letting them experience the same pain again was the best way to take revenge. Irina. The fell demon heard the cheers and screams outside, and the holy light that lit up the entire tunnel, and his expression changed drastically. Meanwhile, the demon beside him collapsed to the ground. They had heard countless legends about Princess Irina. As long as she discovered a group of demons, she would never leave a single one alive. Most of them died in extremely tragic ways. Princess Irina is finally here. You bastards, you're all going to die. The elf who was tied to the wooden frame smiled. Bastard, this is the territory of the fell demon race. Even if she is Irina, she won't dare to do anything to me. The voice of the fell demon trembled slightly, but he still grabbed the hair of the elf tied to the wooden frame and dragged her to the entrance of the cave. One could clearly see his trembling calves. Irina, are you trying to make an enemy out of the fell demon race? The fell demon dragged the elf to the entrance of the cave and blocked her in front of him. He looked at Irina, who was standing at the entrance of the tunnel, and glanced at his subordinates who were melting in the holy light. The fear in his eyes became more intense. Irina looked at the elf who was covered in bloody whip marks and was blocked by the fell demon, and her eyes suddenly became cold. Your Highness, you don't have to care about me. Just kill this evil demon. He has harmed countless of our sisters. The elf was in tears, but her voice was very firm. Shut up. The fell demon grabbed her neck and looked at Irina with a ferocious expression. Irina, as long as you leave obediently now, the fell demon race will not find trouble with you. But if you insist on getting involved in this matter, the fell demon race will not let you off. I don't intend to let you off either. Irina raised her hand, and a beam of holy light blasted into the fell demon's glabella, sending him crashing into the wall behind him. He subconsciously loosened his grip on the elf's hand. The holy light enveloped him and started burning like a raging fire. Ah! The evil demon screamed and struggled in the holy light, but he could not escape. His body disintegrated in the holy light, as if countless blunt knives were cutting his skin at the same time. The pain came from his mind. The elves who had been tortured to death by him had turned into malicious spirits and were constantly biting him. That pain was real. Irina appeared at the entrance of the cave and caught the fallen elf. Her white cloak slid down her body and wrapped itself around her. At the same time, a beam of green light fell on her body, and her injuries healed at a rate that was discernible to the naked eye. Color also returned to her pale face. There are so many imprisoned elves. So these baddies aren't just outside Chaos City, Amy murmured to herself upon seeing this. That's right. These bad guys should all receive the harshest punishment. Meg nodded as he looked at the imprisoned elves. Many of them were only children, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe this place as purgatory. You're safe now, Irina said in a gentle voice as she helped the young elf to her feet. The elf was wrapped in the cloak, and she could feel her injuries disappear in an instant. She was also filled with energy. She faltered slightly before turning to Irina with gratitude, and said, thank you, Your Highness. I'm too late. Irina looked at the young elf with tears in her eyes. She patted her head, and her magic caster's staff appeared in her hand. She raised it above her head, and beams of green light flew out and disappeared into the bodies of the elves in the cave, healing their injuries instantly. The shackles on their bodies were broken, and the thick chains on the door were also broken. The elves, who didn't even know how long they had been imprisoned for, walked out of the underground cave hesitantly. Smiles of freedom finally appeared on their faces, and then they all began to cry. Thank you. Thank you, Princess Irina. The elves went forward to express their gratitude to Irina. Meg slowly exited the tunnel with Amy, and exited the underground cave. Father, why did we come out earlier? Amy looked at Meg with a perplexed expression. Because we might see them again in Chaos City in the future, so it's best not to let them see us now. Meg smiled and said, also, we need to find a boat so that we can send them back to Chaos City. Boat? Is there a boat here? Amy looked around. It was all rocks here, and there wasn't even any wood. There's a very big cave over there. Perhaps their boat is hidden there. Meg brought Amy to the cliff in the west. When Ozzy was flying around the island earlier, he had discovered a big cave at the bottom of the cliff. Indeed, Meg found a big boat with the Fell Demon emblem in that cave. But why don't we let them take the restaurant and fly back with us? It's so slow to take a boat, Amy said to Meg as she walked around the big boat, and then turned back to look at him. Oh, yeah. Meg was stunned. He was really stumped by the question. The flying restaurant's surface area could be enlarged. Although 300 elves was quite a lot, he could still arrange seats for them. They would be able to return to Chaos City tonight, and it would save them a lot of trouble on the way. Little Amy, you're really a clever little girl. Meg patted Amy's head with a smile. However, he still had to move this big boat out of the cave. He had to move these elves away from this small island first. The fell demons should be aware of the commotion here very soon. Chapter 1373. Irina led the elves out of the underground cave. Their clothes were still in tatters, but they looked completely different. Many elves were already sobbing at the feeling of freedom after getting rid of the shackles, breathing in the fresh air, and looking up at the vast sky. Irina was holding an old account book with a cold expression on her face. Meg had already docked the ship by the shore. He glanced at the account book in Irina's hand, and asked, "What's wrong?" An account book that records the sales of the elves they caught in the past 10 years. Irina passed the account book to Meg. Meg flipped through the account book, and found that it was filled with records of the number of wandering elves that they had captured. However, in this account book, they were called piglets. Most of them died from resistance and torture, and the enslaved elves were sold to various places. There were demons, orcs, and even people from the Roth Empire were involved. Meanwhile, Barhill's name appeared very frequently. From 10 years ago until a month ago, there were records of him buying elves. The number was more than 100. What do you intend to do? Meg passed the account book back to Irina. I want to kill, Irina said calmly. However, there was a storm hidden under that calmness. Then let's start from Barhill tonight. Meg nodded. He could understand Irina's feelings. He could also imagine the pain those wandering elves had to go through when they were sold to various places. The first place on the list was Barhill. All right. Irina nodded, and her gaze softened slightly. I've already prepared the ship. I'm afraid it's not very convenient to bring them to the Fear Island, so I intend to let them go to Carapace Island first. We will meet them on our way back, Mag continued. Irina glanced at the big ship not far away. She turned to the elves and said, Everyone, get on the ship. I will bring you all away. Upon hearing this, all of the elves hurriedly collected their emotions and boarded the ship in an orderly manner. Although there weren't any powerhouses among the elves, there were at least grade 3 or grade 4. After removing the badges and markings of the fell demon race, the ship quickly turned around and sailed toward Carapace Island in the south. The griffin circled above the ship, sinking 2 ships and 7 or 8 flying mounts. After making sure that the ship had left the territory of the fell demons, it turned around and flew in the direction of the Isle of Fear. Irina hugged Meg's waist and whispered into his ear, In a while, you and little me will keep watch from afar. I will kill the Barhill as soon as possible and bring away those trapped elves. Meg's heart softened. Irina obviously did not want him and Amy to be in danger. He smiled and shook his head. I'm afraid not this time. You and Amy stay a little further away. Let me go to the Fear Demon Island to transcend my tribulation first. Transcend your tribulation. Irina looked at Meg in confusion. My power is about to recover to grade 9. However, because it is a new breakthrough, it is a little different from normal breakthroughs. It will trigger a heavenly tribulation. I have to endure it to successfully transcend my tribulation, Meg explained with a smile. Even if you break through to grade 9, you are still no match for the Barhill. Irina shook her head. Just watch. With Ozzy around, even if I can't defeat it, I can still run, Meg said with a relaxed expression. It was a little difficult to explain about the lightning tribulation. Irina looked at Meg, thought for a while, and nodded. As the most powerful race among the demons, the fell demons occupied the 3 most fertile and spacious islands in the center of the demon islands. They had the power to look down on the demon islands. A top fell demon patriarch, more than 5 grade 10 demons, and a powerful fell army. Such power was already comparable to the goblins. However, Meg was not flustered. According to the system, when he was transcending his tribulation, the stronger the interference from the outside world, the stronger the lightning tribulation. If the entire fell demon race was involved, he was not sure what would happen. However, the fell demons would definitely be the ones to suffer. On the island to the west of the Fear Islands, there was a hall built with black skulls. A tall demon sitting on a throne of skulls, enjoying a massage from an elf, raised his hand. A servant came forward and knelt on one knee. The demon's face was twice as long as a normal person's. The upper half of his face was densely packed with eyes. The red eyes opened and closed at the same time, emitting a terrifying aura. I heard that the fell demons will release a new batch of goods tomorrow. Go and take a look for me. Buy all the good-looking ones. A few died a few days ago. We have to make up for it, the Barhill said in a hoarse voice. His voice was as harsh as metal scraping against each other. Yes, the servant replied respectfully. Let's go. I'm going to sleep. Today. The Bar Hill's gaze swept across the elves who were avoiding his gaze. He reached out and pinched the chin of a petite elf. "I'll be under your care." A hint of fear appeared in the elf's eyes. She pursed her lips and did not dare to make a sound. The other elves looked at her with pity. Their hearts were also filled with sorrow. None of the elves who had been chosen had a good ending. Countless sisters had died, but even more sisters were bought and fell into this endless abyss. The fell demons were the most powerful demon race. The Wind Forest had tacitly agreed to their deal. They would not offend the fell demons for them. The Bar Hill stood up. He grabbed the petite elf's waist and was about to leave. "Old dog Bar Hill, come out and die." At this moment, an arrogant and loud voice sounded in the sky. It spread across the 3 Fear Islands. Boom! Accompanied by the tremor of the ground, a thunderous sound almost exploded in everyone's ears. "Ah!" The elves screamed. Some of them lost their balance and even fell to the ground. The demons in the hall also looked at each other. Who dared to come to the Fear Islands to provoke them and launch an attack? The Bar Hill's expression turned cold. He let go of the petite elf and sneered, "Heh, it has been many years since someone dared to provoke us here." Boom! Boom! As soon as the Bar Hill finished speaking, 2 more thunderous sounds were heard. The tremor of the ground became more obvious. Some of the skulls hanging on the wall even fell off and rolled on the ground. "Old dog Bar Hill, are you going to be a coward? Or are you fell demons all cowards?" That voice became more and more arrogant. It was like a loud slap to the face of the Bar Hill. "Humph!" Bashir snorted coldly and walked towards the entrance of the hall. With a single step, he disappeared through the entrance. The purple-striped griffin flew above the island of fear like a bolt of purple lightning. It spat out balls of purple lightning from its mouth, which smashed into the buildings on the island below. The balls of lightning exploded with a loud bang, destroying one building after another. Chapter 1374. Meg felt like he was a living villain right now, and he was a villain who was constantly on the brink of death. In the Fear Demon's lair, he rode a purple-striped griffin and bombarded them. He even said such shameful and arrogant lines. This kind of guy usually didn't live past the 2nd chapter. "Wow, father is so cool." Amy, who was standing far away with Irina, said with bright eyes. Irina looked at Meg and said in a cold voice, "Little Meg, if I want to go over later, you stay where you are and don't move. Remember?" "Okay." Amy nodded obediently. "What is he doing?" Irina stared at Meg with a puzzled expression. Her original plan was to sneak in, take care of Bar Hill, and rescue all the elves before the Fear Demons could react. But now, Meg attacked the Fear Demons in such a high-profile manner and provoked them verbally. They had completely lost the advantage of being the first to attack and being hidden. The purple-striped griffin's bombardment quickly caused a commotion among the Fear Demons on the island. As the most powerful demon race after the race war, the Fear Demons hadn't been attacked for a long time. Such a sudden and powerful attack caused the Fear Demons who had weak defenses to fall into chaos. Purple-striped griffin. It's Alex. Soon, some Fear Demons recognized the griffin flying like purple lightning in the sky and exclaimed. The rumors about Alex returning to the top had spread. He killed the spatial patriarch Benson, which meant that he had returned to the ranks of the top powerhouses. But why would he appear on the Fear Demons Island and attack them? But they were a powerful race after all. After a short commotion, powerhouses quickly came out to stabilize the situation. A few figures took off on their flying mounts and faced Meg. Alex, why did you attack the Fear Demons for no reason? A Fear Demon with at least 30 eyes on his face and head shouted at Meg. 4 fear demons stood in a row and looked at Meg with vigilance and nervousness. The old tortoise has hidden himself quite well. Meg glanced at the 4 fear demons. The one who spoke should be the clan leader of the fear demons. The other 3 were also level 10 demons. The fear patriarch did not appear, nor did he appear on Bar Hill. Bar Hill imprisoned and harmed elves. I'm here to kill him. Do you have any objections? Meg said in a low voice as he looked at the demons. No one could see his expression because of the mask on his face. You said you wanted to kill me on Fear Island. Alex, you sure talk big. Bar Hill's voice sounded from the side. He stood on top of the stone hall and looked up at Alex. His expression was not very good, but there was not much fear on his face. Moreover, since when are you in the position to meddle in the affairs of the elves? How dare a fellow who was abandoned by the Roth Empire behave so atrociously in our fear demon tribe? Bar Hill's smile was a little arrogant. Although he was still a little fearful when facing Alex, he did not panic too much. This was the Fear Demon Island, after all. They had 5 10th-tier demons. More importantly, the Patriarch was also here. Even if Alex had recovered to his peak state, he still could not kill him under the Patriarch's nose. Meg frowned slightly. Bar Hill's words were not unreasonable. It was indeed a little unreasonable for him to step in. However, since when did villains need to be reasonable? The elves' affairs are my affairs. I said I want to kill you, so I will kill you. Meg looked at Bar Hill and slowly pulled out the long sword at his waist. The purple-striped griffin flapped its wings and flew towards Bar Hill like a bolt of purple lightning. At the same time, it opened its mouth, and a ball of purple lightning gathered in its mouth before it spat it out. Be careful, Bar Hill. The fear demons did not expect Alex to attack so violently without warning or following the rules of the pugilistic world. They chased after the purple-striped griffin on their flying steeds and attacked Meg's back at the same time. Bar Hill's expression also changed drastically. A ball of black fog suddenly rose from his body, and a huge 1,000-eyed squid extended its huge tentacles out of the black fog. The scarlet vertical eyes that almost covered the entire head of the squid emitted red rays of light, and formed a ghostly red light domain when they intersected. However, Bar Hill was not very confident that he could block Alex's attack. Although he was also a 10th-tier powerhouse, he had only broken through to the 10th tier in the past few years. If not for the fact that he was the Patriarch's direct great-grandson and had countless resources, he would not have had the slightest chance to become a 10th-tier powerhouse. Boom! The ball of lightning exploded in the red light domain, and the domain collapsed instantly. Dozens of the 1,000-eyed squid's tentacles were also blown off, and it suddenly retracted back into the black fog. The area in front of Bar Hill was suddenly empty, and Meg was completely exposed. A cold light had already appeared on the heavy sword, and it was as deep and cold as his eyes. Patriarch, save me! Bar Hill's expression changed drastically as he shouted at the largest island in the middle. The feeling of being stared at by Alex was like being stared at by the Grim Reaper. Although the black fear domain behind him was still expanding, he did not have the slightest confidence that he could block Alex's sword. All kinds of magic followed Alex, but with their speed, there was no way they could hit Alex before he killed Bar Hill. And no one doubted that Alex's sword could kill Bar Hill. After all, Benson and Berg had already died under his sword before this. They were both 10th-tier powerhouses who had been famous for longer than Bar Hill and were stronger. Alex, you've crossed the line. At this moment, a voice that seemed to come from the abyss came from the main island. A large black hand condensed from black fog suddenly reached out and grabbed at the purple-striped griffin. At the same time, there was a terrifying aura, as if an ancient giant beast had opened its eyes. Oh no! Irina held her magic caster's staff. Light flashed under her feet, and she was about to rush forward. System, where's your fucking Italian cannon? Fire at me. I'm going to transcend the tribulation. Meg roared in his heart. The sky suddenly changed color, and a giant purple-red vortex appeared in the sky above the Fear Demon Islands. Bolts of lightning flashed wildly in the vortex like giant dragons. Suddenly, 3 huge bolts of lightning struck down from the vortex and hit Alex, who was surrounded. The magic and the giant black hand arrived almost at the same time. Chapter 1375. In the past, Meg always felt lonely during the tribulation transcendence. He knew that no one in this world could help him. The lightning would penetrate his body and reshape every cell in his body. This was a supernatural transformation. It was not correct to say that it was cultivation. No one could understand the feeling of every part of his body being torn apart and reshaped. It was no longer something that could be described as heart-wrenching. Anyway, he felt especially lonely and helpless. But this time, he felt a little different. Because someone had extended a helping hand to him and blocked the lightning that fell from the sky for him without hesitation. Such a courageous and warm gesture moved him and made him feel warm. Looking at the magic and black giant hands that exploded into bright fireworks along with the lightning, a smile appeared on Meg's face. Then, let the lightning come more violently. What is that? The joint attack of the demons was easily destroyed by the lightning that fell from the sky. Even the Patriarch's attack was destroyed. This really shocked the Fear demons. Could it be that Alex has cultivated lightning magic? His strength is already so terrifying. Some demons guessed that the lightning did not appear on its own. Meg, who was at the center of the explosion but was not affected at all, was obviously the creator of all this. Irina, who was about to go forward, stopped in her tracks. She looked at the unscathed Meg in surprise. She was even more surprised when she saw the lightning vortex that suddenly appeared in the sky. There was a power that made her feel danger in it. Wow, Father can control lightning. He's even more powerful than little Ozzy. Amy, who was originally worried, jumped up happily. Meg glanced at the trembling Bar Hill that was retreating pathetically after being struck by lightning. He was not in a hurry to finish him off. Instead, he looked up at the lightning vortex that was rolling even more violently. He looked in the direction of the central island with a mocking expression and said, "I'm not targeting you. I'm saying that Fear demons are all trash. Alex, you've gone too far. Then, don't blame us for bullying you with numbers." A gigantic squid slowly crawled out of the sea. Its vertical eyes emitted a terrifying red light. There were over 10,000 of them, and they were countless times larger than the squid from before on Ba Hill. Black mist rapidly spread from the sea surface and instantly shrouded the entire sea. Ear-piercing screams accompanied by bewitching red light attacked Meg. An old demon wearing a black robe appeared on the head of the squid. His bald head was full of eyes, and there was a huge vertical eye in the middle of his eyebrows. Black and red flickered as he stared at Meg. Stronger than Benson. Meg only took a glance at the fear fiend before quickly coming to a conclusion. It was not without reason that the Fear Demon clan could occupy the position of the strongest demon clan. Just the strength of this Fear primogenitor alone could be ranked in the top 5 of the continent's powerhouses. Even Alex at his peak was not confident of winning. As for the current Meg, he was just a chi that had not yet broken through level 9. However, Meg did not panic at all. He even wanted to laugh a little. He had come to someone else's home to undergo the tribulation. The 3 lightning bolts just now had proved one thing. As long as he could control the rhythm of the battle, the tribulation would be his weapon. Life and death were indifferent. Fight if you were not convinced. So, Meg raised his middle finger at the fear primogenitor. Protruding. Chi. Ignorant child. The fear primogenitor was indeed angered by Meg's actions. The gigantic squid stepped on the waves and raised its tentacles that were hundreds of meters long. It slapped down at Meg like a long whip. At the same time, the surrounding black mist suddenly contracted, trapping Meg and the purple-striped griffin like a cage. Seeing this, the fear fiends did not intend to stand by and watch. They attacked Meg again. Killing Alex was not an easy task. It was not a shameful thing for level 10 powerhouses to join forces. Moreover, they were now in their own territory. Even if they joined forces, who would know? However, killing Alex would bring countless benefits to the fear fiends. It would raise their status in the fiend race again, or they would once again become the leader of the Demon Alliance. Crack! The thunder sounded again. 6 purple gold lightning bolts struck out from the vortex like a long snake and struck at the squid and the fear fiends that attacked Meg. The lightning this time was obviously more powerful than the previous one. The gigantic squid's leg was cut off by the lightning. The terrifying electricity that quickly spread throughout its body made the red light beam emitted by the squid flicker like a ball lamp in a ballroom. A bolt of lightning struck the surrounding black fog, and the fog instantly dispersed. Even the fog on the surface of the sea retreated like a tide. The other 4 lightning bolts struck the 4 fear fiends that attacked Meg. The fear fiends' expressions changed drastically. They all retreated on their flying mounts. However, the lightning was extremely fast. It caught up with them in an instant, pierced through the protective black mist, and then exploded on their bodies. The flying mounts died on the spot. The fear fiends were also paralyzed. They lost control and fell from the sky. Some landed on the island, while others fell directly into the sea. They were unable to move for a while. So powerful! Elizabeth exclaimed. She looked at this scene in disbelief. The lightning that fell from the sky actually obeyed Meg's control. It was so powerful that it knocked down 4 level 10 powerhouses at the same time. The fear patriarch jumped down from the head of the gigantic squid that lost control and retreated to the main island. He looked at Meg in shock. The lightning was really strange. It seemed to come from the power of heaven and earth, but it was controlled by Alex. Even he had to retreat. As for the Bar Hill, he was scared out of his wits. He retreated with a blank mind, trying to get away from Meg. This guy was too terrifying. He actually challenged the Fear Demon Island alone. Even the Patriarch had to retreat. Bar Hill, you bought and sold elves. You wantonly imprisoned, tortured, and killed elves. Until now, you have no regrets. I hereby sentence you to be struck by lightning. Meg looked down at the Bar Hill and judged. Ozzy swooped down toward the Bar Hill. Patriarch, save me! Bar Hill shouted in horror. The Fear Patriarch's face darkened. He raised his right hand, and the ink-stained sea began to become turbulent. Pillars of water rose from the surface of the sea. Crack! At this moment, a loud sound was heard. The lightning vortex spun crazily. 9 purple gold lightning bolts shot out toward Alex. They quickly merged in the air and turned into a supergiant lightning bolt. It smashed toward Alex and the Bar Hill. The Fear Ancestors' movements instantly froze, and the rising water column also stopped in midair. Based on his experience, if he attacked Alex now, the target of the lightning bolt might be changed to him. He felt a dangerous aura from this super lightning bolt. Countless demons on the Fear Demon Island widened their eyes when they saw this scene. Boom! Accompanied by a loud sound, the purple gold lightning flashed and exploded the entire sea. The moment the lightning struck, a purple lightning bolt had already rushed out of the range of the lightning. the lightning gradually faded. A huge pit appeared in the center of the explosion. A charred corpse fell to the ground and turned into white dust. Meg, who was standing in the middle of the pit, adjusted his mask. He reached out and pressed his curly hair. He sighed and said, "When I'm angry, I'll even strike myself. Are you scared?" Daddy's Otherworld Restaurant. Daddy's Otherworld Restaurant. Chapter 1376. He's still alive. The fear demons stared at the man who walked out from the center of the thunderstorm. Their eyes widened, and fear flickered in their eyes. The bar hill had already turned into ashes. No demon believed that he could survive such a thunderstorm. Even the fear patriarch could only temporarily avoid the terrifying lightning. However, not only was Alex alive, he was even unscathed. Lightning flashed on the ends of his hair, making crackling sounds. This man, who was like the god of thunder, left an indelible mark in the hearts of all the fear demons. They were scared. They were really scared. Father is so handsome. Amy's eyes also lit up, and she looked at Meg in surprise. She didn't guess wrongly. Father was indeed very powerful. He usually just stayed in the kitchen and kept a low profile. When did he learn to control lightning? Did he learn it from little Ozzy? Irina had a look of surprise. At the same time, the hanging star finally fell. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, but her eyes gradually narrowed as she looked at Meg. How many more secrets is he hiding from me? Meg held his sword with one hand and reached out to grab Ozzy's scale, which flew back after circling in the air. He landed lightly on the griffin's back, and only then did he secretly heave a sigh of relief. God knows how he managed to overcome the numbness of his body after being struck by lightning. He quickly changed into the set of equipment that he had prepared beforehand and struck a cool pose to cover up the awkwardness of being unable to move at all. The lightning vortex in the sky hadn't dissipated yet. The whirlpool flashing with purple gold lightning made the fear demons feel fear and despair. Meg sat on the griffin's back, looked down at the fear patriarch, and said confidently, "The bar hill is already dead. Now, I'm going to take all the elves that were imprisoned by him away. Do you have any objections?" The fear demon patriarch looked at Meg, and the dozens of vertical eyes on his face emitted a furious red glow. The sea surface that had calmed down for a while was once again surging with huge waves. The great-grandson that he had spent countless efforts to nurture was killed in front of him just like that. A human actually dared to threaten the entire fear demon tribe. How could he tolerate such humiliation? How could he accept it? The four terrifying demons who had been struck down by the lightning bolts rose into the air once again. Although the numbness caused by the lightning bolts hadn't completely disappeared, they still had the strength to fight if their ancestor wanted them to. They looked at Meg with eyes full of indignation. "If you don't like it, then hold it in." Just then, a beam of holy light shone from afar, exploding on the fear demon island. The holy light instantly illuminated the three islands as though it was daytime. At the same time, a cold voice was heard. Irina walked out of the holy light and looked down at the fear demons coldly like the goddess of light. Her eyes were cold and murderous. "Irina." All the fear demons were shocked. Even the fear demon patriarch's eyes flickered. His hand that was raised halfway stopped again. However, the rumors about Alex had always been with Irina during this period of time. He came for the elf tribe today, so it would be strange if Irina didn't come with him. Just Alex alone had already caused the fear demon tribe to be in such a sorry state. If Irina was added, even if they could kill the two of them today, the fear demon tribe would have to pay a terrible price. They had already lost a young 10th tier powerhouse tonight. If they lost one or two more 10th tier powerhouses, their position as the most powerful tribe in the fear demon tribe would be snatched away by the destruction demons who had been eyeing them covetously. Even the tribes that were ranked lower would have a chance to surpass them. All the fear demons averted their gazes. Although the humiliation of being attacked at their doorstep was unbearable, the fear demons obviously didn't want their status in the fear demon tribe to drop. They were about to face the fear demon tribe's peace talks. All the demons looked at the fear demon patriarch. The fear demon patriarch looked at Meg and Irina with a flicker in his eyes. As the overlord of the sea, this was the first time they, the fear demon tribe, had been bullied like this on the demon islands for hundreds of years. However, no matter how overbearing they were, they still had their own nest. However, Alex and Irina were different. One of them had betrayed the Roth Empire, while the other had betrayed the Wind Forest. They were like pirates who came and went without a trace. They had no scruples, and they were so powerful that no one could ignore them. This was simply the king of scoundrels. The fear demon patriarch's expression changed. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Let them go." The water column that rose from the surface of the sea fell back down. The giant squid's tentacles that were above the water's surface also retracted slowly. All the demons heaved a sigh of relief at the same time and returned to the island. They were still looking at Meg and Irina warily. Irina came to the sky above the island that Bar Hill belonged to. She was enveloped in a golden glow as she looked at the elves who were brought out of the hall by the fear demons. There were more than 300 of them. Most of them were young girls, and they were all injured to varying degrees. The most serious one even had a broken arm as if it was bitten off by some wild beast. Meg flew around the island on his griffin, keeping his guard up against those demons. The young elven girls who were brought out of the hall still didn't know what was going on. They huddled together fearfully. "You don't have to be afraid. I am Irina. Bar Hill is already dead. I am here to bring all of you away," Irina said as gently as she could to the elves. "Princess Irina." All the elves looked up when they heard that. They looked at Irina, who was shrouded in the holy light, like a goddess. Their tears flowed uncontrollably. Bar Hill was dead. Was their life as slaves that would never see the light of day coming to an end at this moment? The elves were still in disbelief. That demon who controlled their life and death was actually killed. "I also want a large flying mount," Irina said to the fear demon ancestor. "Irina, don't push your luck." The fear demon ancestor's face turned cold. A beam of holy light swept across the buildings below. The skeleton hall and the fear demons melted at the same time, and they let out sharp screams. "I have been out for so many years. Revenge has always been returned tenfold," Irina said coldly. The fear demon ancestor's chest rose and fell violently. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Give it to them." Not long after, a giant seagull landed in front of the elves from the main island and bent down. The elves quickly got on the seagull beast. The giant seagull beast with a wingspan of 100 meters could easily accommodate 300 young elven girls. Irina landed on the head of the seagull beast and ordered coldly, "Take off." Although she wasn't a beast tamer, the terrifying aura of a 10th-tier powerhouse could easily make the seagull beast submit. It flapped its wings, slowly rose into the air, and then left. "Don't try to tail me. I can guarantee that I will be faster than you," Meg said meaningfully. He rode Ozzy around the island, then took Amy and followed the seagull beast away from the fear demon island. After a long silence on the island, a fear demon whispered, "Fear demon ancestor, should we chase after them?" "You?" The fear demon ancestor glanced at that demon. That demon instantly retracted his head. No pop-up window. Chapter 1377. The return journey was very smooth. Although the seagull was only a level 3 magical beast, its flying speed was not slow, and its flight on the sea was very stable. Meg circled around a few times. After making sure that the fear demons did not send anyone to chase after them, he lay comfortably on Ozzy's back, feeling the majestic power in his body and the uncomfortable feeling of his clothes rubbing against his body that he did not have time to wash. "Father, you're so powerful. You defeated all the bad guys by yourself." Amy changed her position and looked at Meg with admiration. "Is that so?" Meg looked calm, but he was enjoying the little girl's admiring gaze. "Yes, yes. Just like the god of thunder, he used lightning to strike those bad guys down. It was so cool." Amy nodded her little head, her eyes sparkling. Meg smiled and said, "I see. If Amy likes it, I'll show you the next time I meet a bad guy." "Father, I want to learn this. Strike people with lightning." Amy looked at Meg expectantly. Meg faltered upon hearing this. He couldn't just let the system strike him with lightning every day. Furthermore, he didn't know how to control lightning, so how was he supposed to teach Amy? "Father, you don't want to teach me. Do you think Amy is too stupid?" Amy pouted her little mouth, looking a little wronged. "How could that be? Amy is the most talented magician." Meg quickly comforted her and rubbed his forehead. It felt good to show off, but now it was troublesome to clean up the mess. Meg suddenly had an idea. He smiled and said, "Actually, Ozzy taught me this. If Meg wants to learn, you can learn from Ozzy first." Little Ozzy. Amy turned around and hugged Ozzy's neck. She smiled and said, "Okay, little Ozzy. Then you have to teach me how to control lightning in the future." Ozzy turned around and looked at Meg with a pair of big eyes in disbelief. "I'm sorry, old friend. It's not like we have nowhere to shift the blame." Meg sighed in his heart and then nodded with a smile. "Look, Z has already agreed." Violet's eyes widened even more. Meg and Amy returned home in advance. Ozzy landed slowly on the balcony, and Meg jumped down from the griffin's back with Amy in his arms. Just as they were about to go downstairs, they heard someone pounding on the door from downstairs, accompanied by a low and hoarse voice. "Damn bitch, open the door. If we break down the door, we'll make you wish you were dead." I won't open the door." Jane's voice sounded like she was about to cry. One could hear the fear in her voice. "It seems like a bad guy is here to destroy the shop." Amy's eyes lit up, and she flashed her magic caster's staff. She stood on her tiptoes and poked her head out to look down from the balcony. "Two stupid thieves." Meg poked his head out to take a look. Two fifth-tier demons were crazily pounding on the door with a thick piece of wood. However, the restaurant had a ninth-tier automatic defense function. This level of attack couldn't even be triggered by the reflection effect. Once the mute effect was turned off, they wouldn't be able to break down the door even if they were outside for the rest of their lives. "Father, let me take care of these two bad guys. I'm going to save Sister Goldihorn," Amy said to Meg. "Go ahead." Meg nodded with a smile. Amy was now a genuine sixth-tier close combat and long-range magic caster. Dealing with two fifth-tier demons was no problem for her. Moreover, Z was watching from the side. This was a good time for him to take a shower and change his clothes. "Damn it, why is this broken door so sturdy?" one of the demons said angrily, steam rising from his head. "Yeah, it's just a broken wooden door. We can't even break it open after smashing it for an entire night." The other demon wiped the sweat off his face. He had thought that he would be able to quickly enter the door, grab the money, and have a good time. Then, he would immediately run away. In the end, all his actions were stuck at the step of entering the door. In the restaurant, Jane used her frail body to press against the door. Her body was trembling from fear as she looked in the direction of the stairs. Didn't the boss and Lady Boss hear the commotion downstairs? Why aren't they coming down? If they're asleep, all the more she can't let those fellows outside in. As a native of Carapace Island, she knew very well what the two demons outside wanted to do. Honey, I think we should do something. Boss Hades is a good person, Ivan said with a serious expression as he looked at Gina. In the house next door, Ivan looked at Gamina with a serious expression as he held a thick stone rod in his hand. I think so too, Justin agreed as he held a small stone rod in his hand. I also know that Boss Hades is a good person, but how are you going to help them? You're just a stone golem that just broke through to the 4th tier, and there are 2 5th-tier demons outside. How are you going to fight them? If you risk your life for the title of a good demon, then what about my child and I? Gamina said softly as she grabbed Ivan's hand. Ivan was silent. He glanced at Justin, who was looking at him, and his gaze became resolute. He reached out to press down on Gamina's hand that was grabbing him, and patted it lightly before hugging her tightly. He looked at Justin and said, Justin, if I don't come back, you have to take good care of your mother like a man. After saying that, he turned around and strode towards the door. He pushed open the door, and shouted, those two who knocked on the door, why aren't you scramming? Do you want me to smash your dog heads? Before Ivan could finish his sentence, a petite figure descended from the sky and smashed those two demons' dog heads. They were smashed in an instant. Amy jumped 2 steps back in boredom to avoid the blood that spurted out from the heads. Then, she turned to look at Ivan, who was holding a big rod with his mouth wide open, and shrugged apologetically. Uncle Ivan, I'm sorry. I didn't know you wanted to smash their dog heads too. Did I steal your head? Ivan stared at little Amy with his mouth wide open. That's right, this little fellow who killed 2 5th-tier demons in an instant was Boss Hades' daughter, little Amy. Little Amy. Ivan felt that he must be dreaming if his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. The 4-year-old daughter of the boss next door smashed a 5th-tier demon's head with a rod. He didn't even dare to dream of such a terrifying thing. Have you lost your mind? Amy looked at Ivan doubtfully. Ivan reached out and pinched his thigh. The pain penetrated the thick rock shell and clearly reached his brain. He almost threw the big rod in his hand away. After confirming that this wasn't a dream, and that the completely cold demon lying on the ground really existed, he hurriedly shook his head, and said, It's fine. That's good. Amy nodded. She skipped over the blood on the ground, and knocked on the door lightly with her magic caster's staff. She shouted inside, Big Sister Goldihorn, come out and wash the floor. Chapter 1378. Jane, who was leaning against the door with her thin shoulder, suddenly heard the silence outside. Just as she was wondering if the two demons had paused their attack on the restaurant, she heard Amy's soft and cute voice. Why did Xiao Ai go outside? Jane was stunned. Also, why did she have to go out and clean the floor? Weren't there 2 big bad guys outside? Jane was hesitating whether to open the door. Sister Goldihorn, I've killed those 2 bad guys. I'm coming in now. Amy's voice sounded again. Jane quickly walked to the window and looked out. Amy was indeed standing in the courtyard, and there were 2 black figures lying on the ground outside the door. Although she couldn't see them clearly, they were probably the demons who had just attacked the door. Those 2 demons were actually killed by Xiao Ai. Jane covered her mouth in disbelief. Xiao Ai was so small. How could she be so powerful? However, after confirming that Amy was outside, Jane hurriedly opened the door. As soon as she opened the door, the smell of blood wafted out. The heads of the two demons had been smashed open, and blood flowed all over the floor, dyeing it red. Jane's stomach churned, and she felt that her stomach acid was about to surge up. However, she quickly looked at Amy and asked with concern, "Xiao Ai, why are you outside? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. I jumped down from above. Those two idiots couldn't hurt me." Amy shook her head and smiled. "You're amazing," Jane said sincerely. However, on second thought, since the boss and Lady Boss were so powerful, it was only natural that Xiao Ai was powerful. "My father is the one who's super powerful," Amy said with a smile. "Then what should we do with these two guys now? If the people from Ten Kings Palace find out?" Jane looked at the two dead demons at the door and was a little worried. "Just leave them here. We're leaving anyway." Meg, who had taken a shower and changed into a new set of clothes, walked out of the restaurant. "Boss." Jane's eyes lit up as if she had suddenly found her backbone. "Jane, thank you for your hard work," Meg said apologetically. Leaving her alone in the restaurant had startled her for no reason. No. No. Jane shook her head in embarrassment. She clearly did not do anything. Now that she thought about it, even if she did nothing and just sat in the restaurant and watched quietly, the two demons would not have been able to break through the door of the restaurant. Then, the way she shouted just now, was really embarrassing. "Thanks, Ivan." Meg gestured to Ivan with his hand. I really didn't do anything." Ivan put down the stone club in his hand and scratched his head awkwardly. Even his 4-year-old daughter was stronger than him. Boss Hades was definitely not an ordinary demon. He was not on the same level as them. "We're leaving tonight. I don't have anything to give you, so I'll give you a pot." Meg walked into the yard, picked up a big pot with one hand, and threw it to Ivan. Ifan caught the cauldron in a fluster. He was a little dumbfounded. How could he leave with such a good business? Leave? Jane's heart skipped a beat, and she clenched her fists subconsciously. If Boss and the others were leaving, would they bring her along? She liked the restaurant, and she also liked Boss and his family. She was afraid that she would have to wander around Carapace Island again. There are quite a few demons from the Ten Kings Palace buried under this yard. We might be discovered after we leave. To prevent your family from being our scapegoat, you might have to move, Meg said apologetically. Ivan's eyes widened. What's with burying a few demons from the Ten Kings Palace? He was originally curious why the Ten Kings Palace never came to find trouble with i.e. Crayfish Restaurant when they were so high profile. Now, the mystery was revealed. It was not that the Ten Kings Palace did not find trouble with them, but that the demons who came to their door might have all been buried. What a ferocious response. Ivan did not dare to imagine that such a terrifying family lived next door, and he even tried to risk his life for them just now. I'm sorry. I might have disrupted your lives. Meg apologized again. It's all right. We were planning to leave anyway. We're just bringing our plans forward. Ivan shook his head. Compared to the Ten Kings Palace who did whatever they wanted, he believed that Hades and his family were good people. Then, I wish you all the best. Perhaps I will go to the Rock Demon's Island to taste your crayfish one day, Meg said with a smile. I will do my best. Ivan nodded solemnly, and walked back to his house with the big pot on his back. Moving was not an easy task. For safety's sake, they had to leave tonight. Meg kicked the two demon corpses lying at the door onto the road, and activated the mobile restaurant's flying mode to start cleaning automatically. The blood and hidden oil stains on the ground were quickly cleaned, and beams of light began to appear outside the restaurant, lighting it up. Wow! Amy looked at this scene in shock. The glowing restaurant was so beautiful. Meg turned to Jane and said, "Jane, we are going home. Are you willing to come back with us? I still have a restaurant in Chaos City. If you come back with us, you can continue to be a service staff. If you don't want to go back with us, and have somewhere you want to go, you can tell me, and I will send you there." "I'm willing." Jane, who had been keeping her head down, suddenly looked up with tears in her eyes. Boss didn't abandon her. She could leave this place with them. Meg's heart softened. This maiden had lived a hard life all these years. His voice also became gentler as he said, "Let's go in. Go upstairs and have a good sleep. We will be at the new place tomorrow morning." "But, this floor." Jane looked at the floor that was covered in blood. "Let me do it." Meg waved his hand, and sent Jane upstairs to rest. The automatic cleaning ended very quickly, and the restaurant looked brand new. Meg brought Amy into the restaurant, and turned off all the lights. He clicked on the flying mode, and the restaurant quietly adjusted its posture. Flames erupted, and it quickly rose into the sky. "Let me tell you. Boss Hades and his family are really moving." Ivan and his family walked out of the door, and saw the restaurant rising into the sky with a beam of light, and then disappearing into the sky. Meanwhile, only a pile of gravel was left where IE restaurant used to be. "Uncle Hades and his family came from the stars?" Justin gulped. "Maybe." Ivan nodded. He glanced at the demon's head that popped out from the messy courtyard, and patted Gamina, who was still looking up. "Honey, let's not take anything. Let's go now." Chapter 1379. When the elves on the ship saw the giant water droplet falling from the sky, they were a little nervous. They were afraid that it might be a strange-looking demon. The escalator descended slowly and landed on the ship. Irina stood at the entrance of the escalator and looked at the elves below with a smile. "Let's go. I'll take you out of here. It's Princess Irina." The elves on the ship were overjoyed. They no longer hesitated and went up the escalator to the mobile restaurant. The escalator was retracted, and a fireball fell from the aircraft onto the empty ship. The fire soared into the sky, and the wooden ship was burned into charcoal and gradually sank. The mobile restaurant also disappeared into the sea with a flash of silver light. Meg expanded the mobile restaurant by more than 10 times. The first floor was turned into a large banquet hall, ensuring that there were seats for all 600 elves. The elves who had just walked out of hell suddenly found themselves in a luxurious banquet hall, sitting on soft and comfortable chairs. They were not used to it. That inhumane experience made them subconsciously keep their guard up and distance from everyone, so the banquet hall fell into a very dull silence. "Why aren't these elven sisters talking?" Amy leaned on the railing on the second floor and asked in confusion. "Because they don't know where to start. No matter what they say, it will be a wound," Irina said softly. She had saved many elves before. She couldn't bear to look at their blank and hopeless eyes, but she didn't know how to comfort them. She could only let time dilute the painful memories. "They should be hungry. Why don't I make dinner for them?" Meg looked at the elves who were sitting upright. Most of them were yellow and thin. "Is it enough for so many people?" Irina looked at Meg. "Even Phyllis can cook for all the night elves. This number is nothing to me." Meg walked toward the kitchen with a relaxed expression. He had just broken through to the 9th tier, and there was nowhere to release the power of the peak of the 9th tier in his body. Cooking a meal was nothing to him. 3 pots of preserved egg and lean meat porridge were simmering in the pot. It was easy to cook and could be used to fill the stomach first. Potatoes and chicken pieces flew all over the place. 600 servings of braised chicken and rice were arranged. This was enough to fill the stomach. Then, Meg started to play with mud. Chickens covered in mud were placed in layers into the huge oven. 600 beggars' chickens were the final dish to experience the bliss of eating until one was full. Of course, Meg still owed Lantist 5,000 mud casings. He was already planning in his mind if he should hold a beggar's chicken banquet to collect all the mud casings in one go. The congee with pork and century egg was the first to be served. Jane pushed the 5-tier dining cart full of congee into the banquet hall carefully. The aroma was accompanied by the heat. Within the oppressive silence of the banquet hall, all of the elves raised their heads, and some of them curiously searched for the source of the aroma. The hunger that they were able to resist suddenly intensified, and their stomachs began to rumble uncontrollably. "This is your dinner. Please take your meals according to the order," Jane said loudly and parked the dining car next to the table of elves at the door. All of the elves were a little hesitant. This method of distributing food was a little novel to them. "Can I take a bowl?" an elven girl sitting next to the cart asked timidly. "Yes. Every one of you can take a bowl. I will send it to every table. However, because there are too many, you have to take it yourself." Jane nodded. She was called out from her room, and realized that the dining hall had changed completely. It was her first time seeing so many elves. Elves were indeed as beautiful and elegant as the legend said. That elven girl hesitantly took a bowl of preserved egg and lean meat porridge and placed it in front of her. "Thank you," she softly said gratefully. The other elves saw this, and began to take their porridge with lean meat in an orderly manner. Carts of preserved egg and lean meat porridge were sent to the banquet hall by Jane, and distributed to the elves. The air was filled with the wonderful aroma of preserved egg and lean meat porridge. The elves scooped up the preserved egg and lean meat porridge and put it into their mouths. The wonderful taste bloomed in their mouths, and the warm feeling spread throughout their bodies instantly. What a blissful feeling! It was as if they had fallen into a warm embrace. They had already forgotten when was the last time they ate normal food, and what it felt like to sit elegantly at the dining table and enjoy delicious food. But at this moment, they remembered. They were noble and elegant elves. They were the sons of nature. They were a race that worshipped freedom. Even though they had experienced terrible hardships, even though they had been trapped in a cage and in despair, freedom and pride were still engraved in their bones. Tears glistened in the eyes of many elves. They lowered their heads and ate their preserved egg and lean meat porridge quietly, but their expressions were no longer gloomy. Instead, they gradually brightened up. Before they could finish the preserved egg and lean meat porridge, the braised chicken and rice had already been driven into the banquet hall. If the preserved egg and lean meat porridge's aroma was fresh and elegant, then the chicken soup's aroma that was enhanced to the extreme by the shiitake mushrooms was extremely invasive. Even though they had already eaten a bowl of preserved egg and lean meat porridge, the elves still couldn't help but salivate when they smelled the aroma of the chicken soup. Meat was a very luxurious thing to them, and they hadn't smelled the delicious chicken soup for a long time. The golden chicken pieces were evenly colored, the potatoes were cooked but didn't fall apart, the lettuce was still tender green, and the green and red peppers were embellished. The golden red translucent soup reflected the light, and didn't feel greasy at all. The air was filled with the rich aroma of chicken and shiitake mushrooms. Just looking at it made them want to salivate. The evenly cut chicken pieces had perfectly absorbed the flavor of the condiments and broth, and were dyed with a layer of bright red broth. When they put a piece of chicken into their mouths, the broth wrapped around the chicken pieces contained the rich aroma of chicken soup and shiitake mushrooms. The wonderful taste made their taste buds, which had been silent for a long time, welcome a carnival. It was as if they were suddenly wrapped in the chicken soup and shiitake mushrooms, unable to extricate themselves. They gently bit into the chicken. The meat was fresh and tender, and the flavor of the condiments and shiitake mushrooms had perfectly seeped into the meat. The freshness of the meat had reached a new level, and after swallowing, the aroma lingered in their mouths and teeth. The happiness brought about by the delicious food finally made the elves smile brightly. The sound of praises gradually rang out, breaking the silence. The elves also had some interactions with each other and began to try to get to know each other. Delicious food can really heal everything. For example, my hungry stomach. Amy had taken a portion of braised chicken and rice from somewhere, and her mouth was stuffed as she spoke in a muffled voice. That's right. Being able to fill your stomach with delicious food is the best way to heal. Irina nodded with a gentle look in her eyes. Ding! The crisp sound of a bell attracted the attention of the elves, who were already very satisfied with their meal. A handsome man slowly walked in from the door with a dining cart. On the dining cart was a series of golden balls, which looked like large eggs. Hello, I am the head chef of this banquet, Meg. I am very honored to be able to cook for all of you. Tonight's last dish, beggar's chicken, will be presented to all of you by me. Meg took out a small wooden hammer with a pointed tip and smiled. So he's the head chef. I didn't expect such delicious food to be cooked by a human. He's so awesome. Is there a chicken inside the egg? What a special feeling. All of the elves looked at Meg with gratitude and anticipation. The delicious congee with pork and century egg and braised chicken and rice had already completely won them over. Meg picked up the small wooden hammer and gently knocked on the mud shell. Crack! With a soft sound, cracks appeared on the mud shell. The mud shell bloomed like a lotus flower, revealing the golden beggar's chicken inside. A strong fragrance immediately overflowed and quickly spread throughout the banquet hall. It smells so good. All of the elves' eyes lit up. This fragrance was completely different from the braised chicken. It was a kind of crispy fragrance that made people want to salivate. Please enjoy. Meg smiled and gently placed the beggar's chicken in front of the elf girl closest to him. Thank you. That elf girl stood up, somewhat flattered. Then, she bowed slightly to Meg with the etiquette of the elf race. She felt respect and equality. You're welcome. Meg smiled and nodded. He knocked open the second mud shell and placed it in front of the next elf. The elf girl elegantly tore off a drumstick and took a bite. The crispy chicken skin was gently bitten open, and the tender chicken meat melted in her mouth. The tenderness and freshness of chicken meat bloomed instantly, and the taste buds on the tip of her tongue were immediately disarmed. She didn't have time to chew. Before it could stand firm on the tip of her tongue, it slid down her throat like a naughty little chick. Tender and without any residue, the flavor was unique. This unexpected deliciousness made her instantly fall into a vortex of deliciousness. The smooth and tender chicken meat was like a silent spring rain that moistened everything. She couldn't help but want to moan. Oh, this damn delicacy. Chapter 1380. Do you know what's the most tragic thing in life? I've been eating spicy hot pot for 5 consecutive days. I've been singing at home every day, but I still have to eat spicy hot pot the next day. Don't you think that's tragic? Harrison downed a large glass of beer in one gulp and slumped into the chair with a hopeless expression. You fucking dragged me to eat with you every day. I'm fucking miserable as you are. Do you think I don't know? George rolled his eyes and gently shifted his butt. He had no place to put his butt. Your duck intestines are going to be overcooked, someone at the next table reminded them. No. The two of them immediately jumped up from their chairs and hurriedly scooped up the duck intestines that they had accidentally dropped into the pot of red soup. In the morning, Mamies could barely fill their stomachs with a bowl of congee with pork and century egg. In the afternoon, they closed the door. Only when night fell could the steaming hot pot and the fragrant roast beef kebabs provide some comfort and satisfaction to their stomachs, which had been craving for food all day. However, compared to the rich menu and delicacies when Mr. Mac was here, this was too sad. No matter how delicious the spicy hot pot was, it was too much to eat every day. Miss Mia, when will Mr. Mac be back? Although Miss Raina's hot pot is as delicious as Mr. Mac's, it's still very sad that we can't eat delicious food in the morning and afternoon. Harrison looked at Yabamiya with a sad expression. The customers also looked over. In the days that Mr. Mac had been away, they realized that they couldn't leave Mr. Mac at all. They couldn't help but miss him every time they had a meal without him. I'd like to know too. Yabamiya spread her hands helplessly. God knew how hard it was to deal with the customers who were about to go crazy from not being able to eat good food. She hoped more than anyone that the boss could come back soon so that the restaurant could return to normal. The customers sighed when they heard that. They had heard the same reply many times. Mr. Mac, who was out searching for ingredients, was not coming back. I hope Mr. Mac can bring us a new surprise this time. Otherwise, I will never forgive him. She paused for a moment before adding, unless he lets me have a second helping of tofu pudding. Everyone nodded. To them, the new dish that Mr. Mac might present to them after his return was probably their only consolation. What new dish will it be this time? Uncle Meg and the others went out to collect ingredients for 5 days. It must be an amazing delicacy. Anna whispered. He has never disappointed anyone before. I think he won't this time either, Shirley said with a smile on her face. City Lord's mansion, in a secret room. Urgent news just came from Fear Island. Alex and Irina broke into Fear Island. Alex challenged Fear Island alone with his strange lightning, killed Bar Hill, and took away the 300 elven girls who were imprisoned by him. Michael handed the secret letter to Roland, who had yet to sit down. Roland read the secret letter carefully. The muscles on his usually serious face twitched, and he said with a strange expression, Mr. Mac's trip to collect ingredients this time was really not peaceful at all. Yes. From the timeline, Alfred and Simmons died together on that island for no reason, and then the war between the Abyss Demons and the Flaming Demons was most likely caused by them. Michael nodded in agreement. Looks like Mr. Mac chose seafood this time. The destruction of the Ten Kings Palace on Carapace Island, and the disappearance of the representatives of the various races in the sky above the battlefield between the Abyss Demons and the Flaming Demons. I'm afraid they were behind all these. The two of them used just a few days to muddy the waters of the demon race completely. We don't know when the war between the Abyss Demons and the Flaming Demons will stop, and the other races are also embroiled in wrangling. The Fear Demons, who lost a 10th tier powerhouse, should start worrying about the challenge from the Destruction Demons now. The powerful war alliance of the demons has already become tattered. It's basically impossible to form a united front before the peace talks between the various races. The threat of war from the demons has been temporarily eliminated. They did what we always wanted to do, but were always rejected on the sandbox because of possible mistakes. This is really unbelievable, Michael said with admiration. When Alex and Irina are together, they can always do some unbelievable things. Roland nodded in agreement. They have once again made an outstanding contribution to world peace. Although we can't provide them with too much help, we can at least help them get rid of some imperfections. For example, they were still in Chaos City when Alfred and Simmons fought. The Grey Temple is very good at such things, Roland said with a smile as he turned and walked towards the door. Meg looked at the burping elves with satisfaction and smilingly said, "It's my honor to serve you this dinner. Please take a rest. We will reach Chaos City very soon. Princess Irina has already prepared lodgings for all of you. You will be staying with the Night Elves." All of the elves bowed toward Mag to express their gratitude. The gloominess on their faces had already been swept away, and the bliss brought about by the delicious food and the feeling of satiety made all of their expressions radiant. Many of them had even made new friends. They used to be proud and aloof, but now, they wanted a friend whom they could rely on and confide in. Going to Chaos City and joining the Night Elves meant that a new phase of their lives was about to begin. Many elves already had anticipation written all over their faces. "Thank you," Irina said with her hands behind her back as she looked at Meg, who had removed his apron and came up to the second floor. "It's my pleasure." Meg smiled as he reached out to wipe away the oil at the corner of her mouth. He smilingly said to her, "Is the beggar's chicken delicious?" Seeing that she was caught eating secretly, Irina simply took out the half-eaten drumstick behind her and passed it to Meg. "Here, try it yourself." Meg opened his mouth and took a bite. He nodded with a smile and said, "Indeed, the beggar's chicken I made is so delicious." "Father, try mine." "Mine is super delicious too." Amy tugged at Meg's clothes and tiptoed to pass the drumstick in her hand to Meg. All right, all right, all right. I'll try Amy's." Meg smiled as he took a bite of the drumstick Amy passed to him. He nodded and said, "Amy's drumstick is very delicious too." "Then, whose drumstick is better, mine or Mother's drumstick?" Amy continued to ask. Irina also looked at Meg with her beautiful eyes. Meg raised his eyebrows. Wasn't he the one who made it? This was a choice question that made him happy yet troubled. Chapter 1381. With the mobile restaurant, it was naturally very convenient to enter the city. Without alerting the Grey Temple, the mobile restaurant landed in front of the factory dormitory. The ladder was put down, and all the elves left in an orderly manner under Irina's lead. The dormitory, which had its lights switched off, was quickly lit up again. Menacing arrows were aimed at the mobile restaurant and the crowd below. "I'm back." Irina raised her hand, and the light lit up, illuminating her and the 600 elves. "It's your highness." "Withdraw the arrows," the captain ordered, and the archers withdrew their bows. Meg waved at Irina from above the mobile restaurant. Irina nodded slightly, and the ladder was withdrawn slowly. The mobile restaurant disappeared in a flash, and appeared above Amy's almost instantly. After putting down the ladder, Meg carried Amy and Ugly Duckling, who were already asleep, down. It was midnight, and the restaurant was already closed. Gina should be asleep already. Is this Chaos City? Jane followed Meg down from the mobile restaurant, and looked around curiously. She could see a very big square under the moonlight, but she couldn't see further. She could only vaguely see many houses. This was a big city, even bigger than Carapace Island. "Jane, come downstairs with me. I'll arrange a place for you to stay," Meg said to Jane, and then carried Amy downstairs. He placed her gently on the bed, took off her shoes, and covered her with a blanket. Then, he arranged for Jane to stay in Amy's playground, and made her a mattress on the floor. Meg didn't like others sleeping in his bed, and the study wasn't suitable for sleeping. Hence, he could only let Jane sleep in Amy's playground for the night, and arrange for her to stay at the dormitory tomorrow. "It's a little shabby. I'll change a room for you tomorrow. Just make do with it tonight," Meg said to Jane apologetically. "It's all right. It's super nice here, and there are so many interesting things." Jane looked at the toys around her curiously. Her gaze fell on the swing in the corner, and she couldn't take her eyes off it. "If you want to play, don't be restrained. Xiaomi is very generous." Meg glanced at the swing. It should be very rare on Carapace Island. Jane blushed and responded in a voice as soft as a mosquito. "Good night then." Meg turned around and prepared to leave. "Boss, are you really not a demon?" Jane looked up at Meg's back. "Yes, I'm Meg, the boss of Amy's." "Just like what we promised earlier, forget everything that happened on Carapace Island and start a new life here," Meg said with a smile. "Then Lady Boss, only the four of us know about this. I hope that you can keep this a secret until I'm certain that I'll make it public." "All right, I got it." Jane nodded with a serious expression. Although she didn't quite understand why the boss wanted to hide his relationship with the lady boss, she still knew what to say and what not to say. "Rest early. You've worked hard today." Meg closed the door for Jane and went back to the balcony to drag down Hariti and her servant who were still locked up. Although she had been starving for a few days, Hariti looked even more gentle and charming. She tried her best to make eyes at Meg and tried to seduce him the moment she saw him. Meg didn't fall for it. He slapped each of them until they fainted and threw them into the little dark room on the balcony. He would wait for Irina to come back to decide how to deal with them. As women, these two didn't deserve to die. However, if he let them go just like that, someone would definitely find out something, and it might be disadvantageous to them. Meg didn't mind killing them to silence them. After all, Hariti was as famous as succubi. He didn't dare to keep a ticking time bomb that tried to seduce him all day long. He was also a man, after all. If he were to get drunk one day, Meg didn't want to tell Irina a drunken story on a rainy night. If all the men in the world had my awareness, then there wouldn't be any scumbags. Meg locked the door of the little dark room and sighed with emotion. "Is that so?" Irina appeared on the balcony and asked Meg with a smile. "Ahem." Meg coughed dryly and said awkwardly, "Why are you back so soon?" "Ashley will make arrangements for them. Anyway, the dormitory and things are ready-made. I don't need to look after them," Irina said. "By the way, how should we deal with Simmons's mistress and guard?" Meg pointed at the little dark room and asked. "Bury them. It's simple." Irina didn't think too much about it. "Ah." Meg muttered, "Then why did we bring them back?" "I'll have to ask you that." Irina's gaze was somewhat scrutinizing. "I'm innocent." Meg was dumbfounded. What was this? Irina looked at Meg's expression and chuckled. She thought for a moment and said, "Forget it. Let them sign a contract to sell themselves and then throw them into the factory to burn the boiler. We'll let them go after the limelight dies down. My wife is wise." Meg gave her a thumbs up. Only Irina could come up with the idea of making the delicate ghost mother shovel coal and burn the boiler. Of course, he agreed unconditionally. He didn't dare to object. The signing of the contract went very smoothly. Under Irina's pressure, Charlene and that female demon didn't dare to object at all. They were already very lucky to be able to survive. How could they care about how many unfair terms were listed in the contract? Moreover, they were going to be sent to burn the boiler. 2 golden rays of light entered between their eyebrows. The 2 contracts floated up and burned to ashes in the golden flames. The God of Light has already verified this contract. If you violate the contract, the holy light will melt you to death. Irina looked at the 2 and said. The 2 demons quickly nodded. Irina stretched out her hand and knocked on the spherical mud shell. The mud shell suddenly dissipated, and the 2 naked demons appeared in front of Meg. Meg's eyebrows just raised a little, and the dazzling holy light had already lit up. Oh, this damn holy light. Meg consciously left the small dark room. Fortunately, he didn't see anything. Otherwise, his eyes wouldn't have been as simple as blinking for a moment. After a good night's sleep, Meg woke up early the next day. He went downstairs and wrote a new notice to replace the original notice hanging on the door. I'm Meg, I'm back. After thinking about it, Meg felt that it was too pretentious. He took back the notice and added, "Business as usual today." "Sure enough, it's more comfortable at home." Meg looked around his restaurant. He hadn't seen it for a few days. Even the devil's ivy hanging on the wooden railing had become more beautiful. "Boss, you're back." Raina opened the door and came in. She was surprised to see Meg standing in the middle of the restaurant. No, let me see." Yabamiya squeezed in and looked at Meg. She suddenly burst into tears. "Boss, I finally waited for you. Fortunately, I didn't give up." Chapter 1382. Meg looked at Yabamiya, Elizabeth, and the rest who came in with a smile on his face. They had not seen each other for a few days, and he felt very close to them. They were the reason why he was able to establish himself in Chaos City, a group of outstanding and powerful service staff. Meg swept his gaze across everyone. Even Connie was here, and Camilla was the only one missing. He asked, "Where's Camilla?" "Big sister Camilla said she had to go home after you all left. She hasn't returned yet." Mia shook her head and said, "Do you think she doesn't want to come anymore?" Everyone knew about Camilla's identity. She was the famous countess. It was indeed not befitting of her status to be in charge of chopping vegetables in the restaurant every day. "She's not back yet." Meg raised his eyebrows. He had already heard about the incident with the vampires, but he wasn't sure about Camilla's situation. Now that he thought about it, he should have made a trip to the vampires yesterday. "You didn't expect that Camilla, would be back again, right?" Right at this moment, the restaurant's door was suddenly pulled open. Camilla leaned against the door domineeringly, and looked at everyone from the corner of her eyes. "Are you running away from your marriage?" Meg asked with a smile. Camilla's expression changed slightly. Could the news have reached Chaos City? She retracted her hand from the door, and walked into the restaurant with an unnatural expression. Who said that? Do I look like a vampire who needs to run away from her marriage? Then let's take it that way, Meg said non-committally with a nod. "Boss, is the princess back?" Phyrus asked expectantly as she walked up. "She..." Meg almost said that she was upstairs. Phyrus stayed in the dormitory, so she shouldn't know that Irina came back last night. On second thought, when he went out, Irina went out with him. When he came back, Irina came back too. This would seem too synchronized, as though they were traveling together. That didn't seem right. He shook his head, and said, "I don't know, either. Can we have breakfast now? I'm hungry." At this moment, Irina walked down the stairs and asked naturally. Everyone looked in the direction of the staircase. Their gazes fell on Irina, and after a while, it fell on Meg. They were all puzzled. Although the boss and Princess Irina left for different reasons the last time they left, they returned at the same time this time, didn't they? Furthermore, why were the words and actions of asking for breakfast so familiar and natural? Princess Irina, did you also come back today? What a coincidence. Meg said with exaggerated surprise and winked at Irina. He had already felt the unusual atmosphere at the scene. The collision of the 6 senses of 10 women might lead to some bad inferences. Everyone is here. It's quite early to go to work today. Irina also felt the strange atmosphere, but there was no panic on her face. She still walked down slowly, glanced at Meg, and said in a flat tone, "Do I need to report to you when I come back? This is Princess Irina." The women suddenly felt the powerful aura of a queen, and immediately got rid of the immature thoughts in their minds. It was impossible between the boss and Princess Irina. Isn't that? Meg blushed with shame. Although Irina easily solved the problem with one sentence, he felt a little uncomfortable when he heard it. Even if he couldn't control Irina, he was still a landlord. Water. Irina raised her eyebrows. Meg subconsciously wanted to get a cup of water. Phyllis had already walked forward quickly, into the kitchen to get a cup of warm water, and gently put it in front of Irina, and said softly, "Princess, do you need anything else?" "There's no need." Irina picked up the cup and took a sip. She looked at Phyllis and said, "Bean Sprout, you've been working hard during this period." "No, I just made a small mistake. Look, your chest is so small that it's almost sunken in." Irina looked at Phyllis's chest with a worried expression. Phyllis widened her eyes and stared at Irina. Was the princess that she was familiar with back again? "It's all right, you can still save some fabric." Irina looked up and comforted her. "I don't want to save any fabric at all." Phyllis roared in her heart. "Hey, I heard that your grass-eating uncle has become a primogenitor. Will you vampires become vegetarians in the future?" Irina's gaze fell on Camilla, who was trying to hide in the corner, and asked curiously. "We are pure vampires, and have received special training. We definitely won't eat grass," Camilla said with a serious expression. "But Dracula had a lot of fun eating grass back then," Irina said with a smile. "Unless we can't defeat him," Camilla added helplessly. She had seen Dracula eating grass with her own eyes. That scene was really fresh. Although the vampires had lost a lot of reputation points because of this incident, she did not have any dislike or hatred for Irina. Wasn't it her goal to become a powerful woman who could do whatever she wanted? Moreover, even Uncle Dracula himself did not have any hatred for Irina. He often expressed his admiration for her, so she had no reason to hate her. "Hee, it seems like you have a good relationship with Dracula. Even the words you say are exactly the same as what he said back then. However, we split the ticket price 80% with him back then. He must have been living extravagantly in those years," Irina said with a smile. "There's such a thing." Camilla's eyes widened. She felt as if she had heard something incredible. She didn't expect Uncle Dracula and Irina to do this together. They were not forced. Thinking about it carefully, Uncle Dracula, who had always been known as the stingiest vampire, did suddenly become extravagant. Meg also raised his eyebrows. Indeed, any historical event, from the perspective of those who experienced it personally, was often far from the legends and records. However, this would probably also become an unerasable point in the life of Ancestor Dracula, who had just become the ancestor of vampires. "Speaking of which, aren't you guys going to have breakfast?" Irina glanced at the clock on the wall. She did not have supper last night, so she was already a little hungry. "Breakfast? Amy is hungry too." Amy jumped out of the staircase with Ugly Duckling in her arms. Then, she threw Ugly Duckling onto a chair at the side and pounced on Mia and the rest with open arms. She happily said, "Big sisters, I missed you so much." Mia picked up Amy and smiled. "We missed Amy too." "Amy, your two masters have been to the restaurant many times," Anna said softly. "It's okay. I will go to class today. They must have missed me too much." "It's really worrying," Amy said maturely with a sigh. "There are so many people." Jane stood at the staircase and looked at the beautiful ladies in the restaurant. Then, she quickly shrank her head back and grabbed the hem of her dress nervously. For a moment, she did not know how to appear. "Oh, yes. I want to introduce a new companion to everyone today." Meg looked at the staircase and smiled. "Jane, come on out." Chapter 1383. Jane. Everyone looked curiously in the direction of the stairs. After a while, a young girl in a red maid uniform came down with her head slightly lowered. She lifted the hem of her skirt and bowed stiffly to everyone. Her face was red as she said, "Hello. Hello everyone, I'm Jane. Big sister Little Golden Horn, don't be nervous." "They are all super nice big sisters," Amy said with a warm smile as she went forward and grabbed Jane's hand. "What a cute little golden horn. It's like a dreamy glass. Can I touch it?" Mia said to Jane with a smile as she stepped forward. "Is it cute?" Jane's eyes lit up as she looked up at Yabamiya. She also had a pair of golden dragon horns on her head. She was instantly infected by that energetic smile, and nodded slightly. Mia reached out to touch Jane's horn gently. It was cold and smooth to the touch, just like a crystal. However, she quickly retracted her hand with a smile. "Hello, Jane. I am Yabamiya. I seem to be a few years older than you. You can call me Big Sister Mia." "Big Sister Mia," Jane said softly. She felt warm in her heart instantly. It seemed like she had another friend. "Hello, I am Connie. Can I touch your horn too?" Connie came forward and looked at Jane's horn enviously. Jane nodded slightly with a red face. She didn't know why her horn, which had been mocked since she was young, was liked by everyone here. However, this feeling was really great. "I'm so envious. Why can't I have such a beautiful horn?" Connie touched Jane's horn as her two pinkish-white beast ears drooped. Everyone went forward to greet Jane, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. Meg looked at Jane's face that gradually brightened up, and a smile appeared on his face. He turned and went into the kitchen to make breakfast for everyone. He had to make a scrumptious breakfast today as a reward for the ladies who worked hard while he was away. When he returned to the restaurant last night, the system reported the income for the past few days to him. After deducting the costs, the net profit was more than 1 million copper coins. On the other hand, all his hard work on Carapace Island had only earned him a few 100,000 copper coins. This was a hen that could lay golden eggs by itself. Even if Meg retired, he wouldn't have to worry about money for the rest of his life. Raina's hot pot and Phyllis's beef kebabs were enough to support half of the restaurant when he wasn't around. "Boss, are you going to launch a new dish during this trip?" Mia came to the kitchen door and looked at Meg, who was busy in the kitchen. She said with some lingering fear, "The customers have already said that if you can't release a new product that satisfies everyone, they will starve to death in front of the restaurant." The girls also looked at Meg curiously. He had been out to collect ingredients for 5 days, which had already broken the record of time spent out to collect ingredients. They wondered what kind of delicacy he would be cooking this time. "It's okay. As long as they reach the entrance of the restaurant, they won't starve to death," Meg said calmly. She turned around and looked at the curious girls. She smiled mysteriously and said, "You will know at noon. Looks like it will be a very delicious delicacy." Yabamiya's eyes lit up. She could tell from Meg's relaxed and confident expression that it would definitely satisfy everyone. "Oh my God. Am I seeing things? Mr. Mac is back." "No. You're not seeing things. Mr. Mac is really back." No. I'm too excited. I'm a little dizzy, take him away." "Next one. Don't take him away. Help me up. I want to eat another bowl of Yangzhou fried rice made by Mr. Mac himself." At the entrance of the restaurant, the customers who had seen the announcement went crazy. In these 5 days without Mr. Mac, they experienced what it meant to have a day pass like a year. "Sisters, we must make Mr. Mac give us a second bowl of tofu pudding today to compensate for the loss of our beauty treatments," a rich lady shouted. "Agreed. Seconded." The women in the line all raised their hands in agreement. In these 5 days without tofu pudding, they felt that they had become a lot more haggard. Even their confidence in front of men had been reduced. Can you count me in? A man's voice was weak. Go away. The women shouted in unison. It was these men who had taken their share. Sometimes, they wouldn't be able to eat if they came late. At 6:30 a.m., Meg, who had finished breakfast, went out to give out the love breakfast to the cleaners. Mr. Mac, you're so cruel. Do you know how sad I am to leave a pregnant woman like me behind? A pregnant woman with a big belly complained tearfully. Meg? Irene, let me explain, Mr. Mac, did you see my heart? No. Liar, you've obviously taken her heart away, but now you're pretending that you don't know. You, uncle, don't be like this. I'm a little scared. Meg took 2 steps back and looked at the bearded uncle in horror. Mr. Mac, did you see my belly? Harrison stroked his own belly. That's fat. Meg said sternly. No, I mean. I've been starving for the past few days when you weren't around. Then I really can't tell. Meg looked at Harrison's still eye-catching belly and shook his head. After not seeing them for 5 days, Meg was really frightened by the crazy enthusiasm of the customers. He didn't know how Mia and the others had managed to survive the past few days. It must have been hard on them. Mr. Mac, will there be a new product today? George was squeezed out of shape by the crowd, and he asked Meg with determination. There will be a new product at noon. Please look forward to it, Meg answered the question that everyone was very concerned about with a smile. Mr. Mac, we haven't had tofu pudding for many days. Can we have a second helping this morning? The noblewoman who had gathered the customers earlier asked. Everyone can only buy 1 helping of tofu pudding per meal, but from today onwards, the amount of tofu pudding per meal will be increased from 300 bowls to 400 bowls, Meg said with a smile. The second helping was non-negotiable. Everyone was a little disappointed, but they smiled at the additional 100 servings. This way, even if they came a little late, they would still have a chance to eat the tofu pudding. After distributing breakfast to the cleaners, Meg stood on the steps at the entrance of the restaurant and looked at the 2 long lines of customers that had been restored. He said apologetically, I'm sorry to have made everyone wait for so long, but it's okay. You'll get used to it in the future. Get lost. The customers roared in unison. They were just short of throwing rotten eggs and vegetables. Was this guy still planning to stand them up? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.